wasn't around to make trouble, but we'd kept enough secrets about Fionn from the council that my word on the subject wasn't always trusted, especially when the two of us had been the only witnesses and didn't have the faintest idea where Fionn would strike. Logically, the best hiding place for a she-lord was on the ley line, but that was entirely too obvious. Considering how messed up the Vale had been lately, there's no way they'd been buried within the city. Someone would have noticed. One look inside Half-Blood territory told me nobody in here would be able to give me answers either. The grass was bare, the few remaining plants decaying. The blocks of flats remained in the same place, but with curtains drawn or open onto rooms bare of furniture. Normally, this place sent my senses into overdrive. The only smell was a faint aroma of rot, and no sound disturbed the silence. I held my sword high, its glow positioned to draw attention onto me. The Banshee's death left the surviving half-bloods living here without a leader. That meant nobody to represent them. Not that the chief had done a particularly good job negotiating with other supernaturals anyway. I doubted anyone would follow him now he was in jail. Speaking of jail, I reached the paths leading through woodland, but it looked different to last time. A rustling sounded. I swung around to face the source of the noise, and a terrified-looking teenage girl retreated into the shadows. "Hey, I'm not here to hurt you. I just wanted to know what happened here." Hesitantly, she raised her head. A bushy squirrel tail poked out behind her. She was maybe 12 or 13, with blonde, spiky hair. "They all vanished," she said. "And the woods..." I blinked. Then it hit me. The trees had moved. The entire back half of the territory had gone. In its place, the forest which had bordered on Half-Blood territory had extended. Huge, sprawling trees covering the space where the jail and the former chief's place had been. "You're Ivy, aren't you?" "Yeah, I am." "If creepy forests aren't your thing, you should probably move." Where in hell was the chief? "Is the prison underneath there? Is the chief still alive?" "I don't know. I haven't seen anyone leave since the forest moved." Damn. "Look, if you want somewhere to stay, head to Witch territory. The Laurel Coven has an open-door policy for people who want to leave Half-Blood territory. I don't think it's safe here anymore." Nothing to do but go and see for myself, and hope nothing worse had moved here, along with the forest. Maybe the witches knew what was going on. It took 10 minutes of stumbling through the wooded area to find where the jail had been. The trees had closed in around the building, causing half the roof to collapse. Was the chief still stuck in there? What about his troll guards? Warily, I pushed open the door. It creaked inwards, and my sword lit up the way into near darkness. "Hello!" Eerie silence answered, and Helena's blue light made the broken bars and shattered cells even creepier. Dead bodies lay inside some of them, more than a few. Bile burned my throat. Had someone slaughtered every prisoner? I stopped, halfway down the corridor. The collapsed roof had landed on the end row of cells, and I didn't need to get close to see nobody over there had made it out. But none appeared to be the chief. I peered into every cell, counting 25 dead, but no short, pale, staff-wielding summer half-bloods. Either he'd been crushed, or he'd escaped. None of the dead wore armor, either. So had his guards escaped too? If so, where had they gone? Into the forest? I backed out of the jail and found myself faced with a wall of thick tree branches. They'd grown close enough together to stop me from walking in, blocking the path past the jail. I reached a dead end, also blocked, and turned around to walk back to the forest's main entrance. Problem was, it had overgrown its original boundaries, and no matter how hard I searched, there didn't seem to be a way in which didn't involve climbing a tree and squeezing through a gap in the branches. I swore under my breath, making my way around the tangled trees until I reached the fence. Thick, sprawling trees blocked that way too. Seriously? I spied a likely route in and made for the nearest, fitting my hands to dents in the trunk which would serve as handholds to climb up and see in. I dug in my right hand, pulling myself up. A shock of energy went through my palms, and I was thrown back, like I'd jumped into an electric fence. I gasped, my magic reacting to the force which had knocked me from the tree. What the hell? I tried another tree. Same result. The forest was entirely sealed, as though it had gone into defensive mode to protect itself against attack. Are the she-lords buried in here? The forest lay on top of a tangle of spirit lines, but I couldn't see there being space for more reality-warping, overpowered beasts, which meant Fionn couldn't be there. Unless it had locked to keep him out. Considering what he'd done to the Hemlock Witches, I didn't exactly blame them. But still, super helpful. I sent Vance a quick message and began the long walk back home. Chapter 16. I woke from dreams of Fionn riding around on a giant dragon when Vance pulled the necromancer's handbook I'd been using as a pillow out from under my head. I'd fallen asleep at the desk in the bedroom. "What's this for?" he asked, looking at the map. I rubbed my eyes, squinting at him under the soft light of the desk lamp. Trying to find where Fionn's friends might be hiding? It'll be at a key point, which would be helpful if there weren't hundreds of them on the ley line alone. Isabel and I had talked for a while, but apparently I'd been more tired than I'd thought. I stretched my stiff neck and yawned. "You should go to bed." "Hark, who's talking? Where have you been?"
"I went to Shifter territory. Most of them have the sense to stay away from the ley line, but it's entirely too close."
"Shit, you're right. The Shifter god. Maybe that is where the She are buried."
"I doubt it. The god was buried a long time ago. The She who fought in the invasion wouldn't have been put in the same place. It's too recent. The half-bloods would be able to sense their magic."
"They'll be at a key point," I said. "A liminal space, where the fairies used to hide in when humans were hostile to them. But if we assume all liminal spaces warp reality the way Faerie does, there's no way whatever Fionn's looking for is within the city. Someone with the sight would have noticed. The half-bloods definitely would have."
"You're right,"
said Vance.
"However, my attempts to get cooperation from the other regions were met with resistance. We don't have enough evidence to bring other mages in if Fionn strikes."
"Shit. Don't tell me Lady Granville put her foot down again." He scowled.
"Yes, she did. The woman requires proof we don't have."
"And I doubt she'd trust my account."
"She accused me of stirring up the Half-Bloods' rebellion myself, implying my Shifter ancestry prevents me from making rational decisions."
I gasped. "And she walked away with her head still attached?" He didn't laugh. I put my arms around him, furious with the indignity of it all. "That's total bullshit, Vance. She isn't right. Shifter blood doesn't mean anything."
"It does, to some people. In some other regions, shifters don't have a voice on the Supernatural Council at all. To the mages, having shifter blood isn't looked on favorably. I suspect my father had to work hard to maintain his standing in the eyes of his fellow mage lords. The blood is seen as a sign of instability. At the very least, it's unattractive." I snorted. "You, unattractive? Have you ever looked in a mirror?"
I poked him in the shoulder. Then I remembered Fion's comment about my disliking shape-shifting. Your mage ability probably freaks more people out than the claws do. He arched an eyebrow.
I did tell you I'm not entirely human, Ivy. That won't change no matter my position. In any case, some of the decisions I've made in my time on the Mage Council certainly come across as irrational to anyone who doesn't have the full picture. They think I'm stirring up unnecessary panic, and our last trip into Faerie didn't help matters at all.
Please tell me you told her to go screw herself.
I told them Fion started the invasion.
Oh. They didn't know, right? I'd told Vance, before Fion had confirmed it, but there was no evidence but his word as to what had really gone down 11 years ago.
No. I made it clear the evidence suggests Fion killed the Mage Lords in person, or she acting on his orders did. The others didn't dare challenge my claim, and we left on a stalemate.
Damn. The mages currently on the council hadn't been involved in the main part of the battle in the invasion, because none of the city's mages on the front lines had survived it. My own memories were still patchy, and I hadn't even known the mages existed at the time. But I had little doubt that Fion himself had been behind Vance's parents' deaths, and possibly the massacre of which Vance had been the only survivor.
Exactly.
He rested his hands on the back of the chair, looking exhausted.
They won't dare call me a liar for claiming that we saw him in Faerie, but there's no procedure. The city is already set up to face another emergency. What we don't have is an attack force to take into the Vale itself, and Drake and I were outvoted on the grounds that most mages' abilities will likely not work to their full effect in Faerie.
Probably true. Still, they really ought to respect you more than that. I ran a finger over the rough scales which extended to his elbows, while claws replaced his hands, the same dark grey shade as his scales. It didn't look like he was stuck halfway through a transformation. The scales blended seamlessly with his skin, like a pair of gloves. See? I said, as the claws flickered and turned back to skin. The dragon's a scary bastard, but you're relatively harmless.
Relatively harmless?
There was a mock, insulted note to his tone, and I was relieved to see a familiar gleam in his eyes. The claws that came out when he fought were a sight I'd grown as used to as his mage powers, and it hadn't occurred to me that he might still feel insecure about me seeing them in any other context. But Shifter's abilities weren't just predatory, they were fixated on protecting the people closest to them, at any cost to themselves. What Vance thought of as an unattractive trait was one of the reasons I loved him. By the way, we aren't competing on screw-ups, I told him. I let a half-blood under my watch get away and might have caused the apocalypse.
If it happens, Fion planned it that way. It's not your fault.
You think this is it? No second chances this time?
I think there's a strong possibility this is the last chance I'll have to touch you for a while.
He slid claw-free hands over my body and kissed me fiercely. My hands wound into his hair as I kissed him back. It was damp, like he'd been walking around in the rain. Then my hands were on his chest and moving south as his clothes disappeared one at a time, and he pressed against my aching center. I took him in my hands, and he groaned as I slid my hand up and down the length of him. A cool breeze caressed my skin, warming as it slid between my breasts. Oh, Vance.
I want to feel you,
he said huskily.
I want to be inside you.
You're making a damn good argument. Oh, my nerves ignited as a feather-light breeze stroked my whole body, settling between my legs. How'd you do that? His mouth stopped my breath, and cool silk slid beneath me as he lowered himself onto me on the bed. I rocked into him, a moan slipping through my mouth. and pleasure coiled tight inside me, threatening to unravel. Warm tingles spiraled down my spine in waves, and electricity ignited at my nerve endings. I moved faster, gripping his hips with my hands. My body clenched around him, and I screamed, a hoarse cry of relief. His answering shudder came moments later. We lay in a breathless tangle, my head resting on his chest. "For the record," I said, "I like your claws. They're part of you. And I love you." Whatever Faerie threw at us, it'd never take those words away. Vance made a faint growling noise of quiet contentment and pulled me close to him, and I fell asleep with my head buried in the crook of his neck.
"We're completely screwed," Drake said the following morning. "None of the mages, the necromancers, or any of our contacts have the faintest clue where these elusive she-bastards might be hiding."
"Except the hemlock coven, maybe," I said. "I tried to go into the forest, and it threw me out. Literally. And we can't check every key point in the country. The whole world is covered in hundreds of spirit paths. Of course, Fionn might be lying, and actually plans to make trouble as a ghost for eternity." Drake groaned.
"I fucking hate the fairies."
"Welcome to the club," I said. "The chief's disappeared into thin air. The forest's gone out of control. Maybe it's an after-effect of the Grey Veil overlapping with this realm, or the Banshee did something to half-blood territory to stop anyone escaping. Or the Hemlock Witches have decided they can't win the battle and put defenses onto the place."
"Any might be true,"
said Vance.
"The other mage lords want to call a cross-country meeting to discuss measures to take, if the worst happens, and Fionn does cause another invasion."
"Meetings. Just what we need when there's another bloody madman trying to break the veil."
"Gotta agree with Ivy there,"
said Drake.
Hey, you little bastard, get back here!"
I spun around in my seat at the same time as Vance disappeared in a torrent of air, materializing behind Quentin as he attempted to slip out of sight.
"I don't want to harm you,"
said Vance in a low voice.
"But unless you tell me why you betrayed my family, you're putting me in a position where I might have to make a choice I'll regret."
"I did not betray the Colton family," said the brownie, remaining where he was. I moved forwards, wishing I hadn't left my sword in the office. "Then you'd better have a damn good excuse. Did you bring Summer with you?" "My masters leave their realm at their own discretion. I heard of your disappearance and returned immediately." 4 days later," I said. "Damned fairies. Did you even ask them if we should speak to you?" "They do not see the situation as urgent. I think differently." "That makes 2 of us. Do they know whether she might be buried in this realm? The others involved in the invasion?" "No, and if they did, they would not be permitted to speak of it. Words hold a great deal of power." "I know." And there went my last shred of hope. "So, the world's ending and nobody knows how dire it is but us. Isn't that always the way? Fionn won't stop at this realm either. He's searching for a new body to possess, and he'll stop at nothing." Vance moved to stand in front of Quentin, while Drake walked to his side.
"The half-bloods are scattered and rioting," Vance told Quentin. "Your position won't protect you. You'll stand on our side or against us, one way or another."
Quentin straightened upright. "There's only one side on which I will stand. Against the beasts which want to claim this realm." "So you did know Fionn was coming back?" I said. "I did not. The death fairies are more commonly associated with winter, and our connection with winter was killed in the invasion." "Your connection?" I looked at Vance. "Were there others? People working for Faerie but living here in the mortal realm?" "We made a pact," said Quentin. "The Colton family,
the Hemlock Coven, and a number of other supernaturals. We were the Council of 12. I snorted. Dramatic much? He glared at me with beady eyes. The Council does not exist anymore. Most of its members were lost in the invasion, and the truth along with it. I stared at him, no longer feeling like laughing. Who were the 12? All the supernatural races. Vance's grandfather. Originally. Then after he passed, his father took over. Myself as an emissary for Faerie, and another Faerie, whose life was lost in the struggle. 2 noble Sidhe, one of summer and one of winter, were also killed in the fight against their kin. 2 Sidhe, plus 2 of their servants, which left witches, I said. The Hemlock Coven, right? Correct. 2 others were necromancers, Vance said, and Quentin dipped his head. And they were the ones who sealed away Fionn, right? I asked. So what did you do? I myself ferried messages between this realm and the Summer Court. The necromancers, witches, shifters, and mages were concerned with the protection of this realm, while the Summer and Winter Courts sent emissaries as needed to ensure the balance remained in place. What went wrong? Wait, I already know. And I guess you did too. Fionn decided to take down the courts. He recruited other banished fairy lords from the Grey Vale after exile, and they broke open the ley line and invaded this realm. Right? I was not in Faerie. The witches saw when the huntsman entered their woods and realized he had stolen something incredibly dangerous. Yeah, the ring. You know, it'd have been nice if you'd told me some of this before I woke Fionn up. The spells are complicated. I can only name the former members because they are dead. Seems a bit excessive, I said. Anyway, it's not true that no one remembers the invasion. You remember. I was not privy to any of the events which led up to the invasion. My goal was to serve the human family I'd been ordered to protect. So Summer did give you the orders first. I was born in Summer, and chosen to serve the Colton family afterwards. I am not disloyal. My vow compels me to serve both. Vow. The one kind of magic which could overthrow almost any other. If the one way to save this realm, and your master, was to take us with you to Faerie, could you do it? As a last resort. Perhaps. But I cannot guarantee my other family wouldn't call me back first. They allowed me to return so I might explain my position, and they will only come here if the realms are put at risk again. They are, Vance and I said at the same time. I don't suppose you're allowed to speak of the talismans, Vance added. Quentin shook his head slowly. Not the talisman you wield, Ivy Lane. I've never seen it before. Because it came from Winter, then the Grey Vale, I said. You know, I'm not listening to a word when the next bloody fairy tells me I'm not worthy to have their magic. Because it sounds like these supposedly wise she-lords are the biggest idiots alive. They destroyed our realm because they lost control of their own talismans. The ring... The talisman is gone, correct? Asked Quentin. I destroyed it. You know that. Then nothing else will stand against him. Drake mouthed, shit. Vance looked like he was thinking the same. Quentin spoke again. But the remaining council members can help you. I thought you said they were dead. There is one you can speak to, though he is not in this realm any longer, nor in Faerie. Not here, or in Faerie? I frowned. Wait. In death? You mean... Then, too late, it hit me.
Who told me the Grey Veil had been created when the Sidhe exiled their gods in the first place? The necromancer. Frank. Chapter 17. Vance transported me to the necromancer's doors, blasting them open. I ignored the shouts from inside as I stormed ahead. How could I have been stupid enough to forget Frank the bloody necromancer had been the one who'd told me about when the Grey Veil had first been created? He'd known all along, just like Quentin. He'd even said he knew Vance's grandfather, and I'd still overlooked the connection. "Hey!" squeaked Colby, running in front of us. "Mage Lord, Ivy, you can't be in here."
"Ivy is here with my permission," Vance said to the room full of stupefied necromancers. "It's an emergency, as you'll hear from the mages shortly." The sight of Helena glowing in my hands ensured nobody else would stop me. For a bunch of people who spent all their time speaking to ghosts, how had none of them managed to ask the obvious questions about the invasion?
What are you doing?" yelped Colby, as I bent down to light the first candle by the giant summoning circle. "Speaking to your mentor. Do any of you know who Frank was when he was alive?"
"Lord Frank Sidney?"
"Yes, that Frank, the necromancer guardian." A flame leaped up from the candle, and I reached for the next. Vance had moved to the circle's other side, sending the remaining necromancers fleeing to the sidelines. They were young, mostly. Young enough to have been children in the invasion. They'd lost their best fighters, even more than the mages had. And the remaining one, who'd made a pact with Quentin and the council. He'd been here, watching all along. So much for trusting the word of the dead. I lit the last candle, tapping a foot impatiently. That did it for the remaining necromancers. They fled as smoke appeared in the circle, along with Frank.
"What is it?" he asked. "You'd better have good reason for drawing me away from the gates, Ivy. What have you done to the veil?"
"Not me," I snapped. "Fionn. When did you plan to tell me you knew about him and the Sidhe all along? You're dead. Unless you got caught in the memory-erasing spell someone put on Fionn, you know all of it." Frank's jaw dropped. A weird sight on a transparent ghost.
Who told—"
"The brownie."
"Got it in one, dickhead." I lifted my sword. "By the way, this talisman can kill ghosts, so don't even think about trying to make a run for it."
"That's not necessary," said Frank. "What is it you want to know?"
"Why you felt the need to lie to us, even though you knew what my magic was, and where it came from. You're the one who told me in the bloody first place."
"I haven't a clue what you're talking about. Your magic. I didn't lie to you. I've never seen magic like yours before you came along."
"Well, you worked with this secret council. You knew what really happened in the invasion, when everyone else has forgotten because all the witnesses either died or went back to Faerie, leaving us in the lurch."
"I'm dead, Ivy," he said. "I never lied when I said I'm restricted to certain parts of the veil. I didn't witness the full extent of the invasion, and I didn't even know who the huntsman was before he came to this realm."
"But it's been 20 years. You can't seriously tell me you've never been away from the gates. Besides, weren't you the one who locked out the dead after the invasion, shoving them out of sight?" His transparent body flickered, sadness crossing his face.
"I was. The other guardians. Many of the others didn't make it. The impact when the two worlds clashed took weeks to restore. All I and my fellow guardians could do was leave the gates open and encourage every one of the dead to pass through. Everyone killed in the invasion, along with the invaders, was thrown past the gates.
My mouth parted. The Sidhe. They were killed too. Unless they were put to sleep like Fionn was. But it wasn't right. She didn't have spirits. When they died, that was the end of it. They didn't pass beyond the veil into death. They were snuffed out. Assuming they did die.
The Sidhe, if they survived, were punished by their own courts. I wasn't involved.
But you did know about Fionn. You knew they put a forgetfulness spell on his tomb.
I knew something of that nature occurred, but not how they went about it. I never had magic in life.
This is all very interesting,
Vance growled.
but you haven't explained why you and Quentin deceived the rest of the supernatural community, if just to preserve an old pack which was wrongly forgotten. Did you assume nobody would ever attack this realm again?
The air in the room turned static under his power, and even the ghost trembled. And even if you did, I added, you know how many times forces have been stirred up on the Vale, and you should have known when Fionn woke up, back in January. You've had months, no excuses.
Perhaps I did stick too closely to my arrangement with the council. It was your grandfather's idea, Mage Lord. The council was set up to foster cooperation between the magical races and ensure our safety. None of us thought we'd ever be exposed to humans. The Sidhe are a long-lived race, ancient and clever, and the notion of one of them betraying their courts and tipping the balance. By the time the witches realized they intended to break into this realm, it was too late. For all of us.
You were already dead, I said. You didn't get a bad deal. Anyway, Fionn's back, and he's looking for a body to possess. Don't bleat at me that it's impossible. He's a freaking death god and has the ability to fuse a soul with a body, walk between all the realms, and probably more crap I don't know about.
Calm down, Ivy,
he said.
I can't materialize for long. He's done too much damage already. If he is a death god, this isn't something any of us are equipped to deal with. The gods were supposed to be gone, sealed away between worlds.
But they weren't gone, just sleeping. You know that.
It was before my time,
he said.
Long before. If I knew how to stop Fionn, I would endeavor to help you. All I can do is advise you, based on what I've witnessed of your magic.
I know it's from a god, I said. Which? He shook his head.
Again, I don't know. But you have at least one ability like Fionn does. If you can leave your body without using a summoning circle as an anchor, you can also travel using the spirit lines. That means you're able to travel between key points by following the lines, if you leave your physical body behind.
What? I can hop from one point to another. Why not tell me this before?
Because I feared you'd damage the veil. If Fionn does mean to search the key points hidden between this realm and death, they can be reached via any spirit line, if you know where to cross.
But I don't. My brief flash of hope was snuffed out. If I'm floating around without a body, I might get lost for years and lose all connection with my real body. How long can you disconnect without being stuck in death for good?
For a necromancer? Indefinitely, as long as your body is kept alive. But the longer you stay out, the higher the risk you'll never return.
Figures. When I'd gone to the liminal spaces in the Grey Vale before, I hadn't crossed without my body. It seemed a good way to an early grave. And with people getting trapped in death until they expired, I might never come back. Yet, without a body, I could travel through death. It was surely worth the risk. Vance would understand, right? I met his grey eyes. Maybe not. Anger lined his face, and my skin prickled in the sudden breeze.
If you're endangering Ivy, I'd go back into death before I put you there myself.
Whoa! I looked at Frank. I'm not seeing another option here. But, Frank, if you know anything else, tell us. This is too important. I don't care about your vows or pacts. I care about this realm not being taken over by angry death gods.
The veil is unstable. As guardian, I have to remain in place and not interfere. I can only instruct you from this side.
So, will my using the spirit parts cause damage as well?
Perhaps. You'll have to decide whether you'd like to take the risk.
That's no choice at all. I looked desperately at Vance. I need to find wherever these she-lords are hidden and destroy them before he can find a body. There's no way to destroy his ghost. My magic can't kill him. I'm not sure anyone can.
She.
He arched an eyebrow.
If you're correct, and Fionn is indeed looking for a new body, it won't be one of the she. They can be killed.
But gods can't. Like Fionn himself. He wouldn't accept anything less. But are there any gods he can easily get to? Shit! Is he looking for the life drinker? The dragon shifter's god was asleep, imprisoned in the Grey Vale, and easy for Fionn to find, if he wanted to. Surely he already knew that. Frank shook his head.
I doubt the huntsman would want to risk waking a rival. I was thinking of... But it makes sense.
Thinking of what?
The fairies say there's an artifact capable of creating a new body, he said. A legendary cauldron, which contains the essence of life. I can't imagine Fionn knows where it is, but neither does anyone else.
Well, shit. Seriously? How the hell am I meant to find it then?
Like I said, the spirit paths.
You're not trying to get me out of the way so Fionn can take over, are you?
Why in damnation would I support him?
He sounded so insulted, I must have guessed wrong. You must know how risky it is to leave my body behind.
You can walk into death with or without a body, and I'm fairly certain you have a necromancy handbook in your possession, which you never returned to the guild.
Oops. Guilty. Admittedly, I'd read the thing backwards, but it sure as hell didn't mention travelling along the spirit lines. Necromancers needed a tether. Death gods, however, did not.
Is there a way to make Ivy's spirit reconnect with her body, even if she's far away? Asked Vance. If not, there's absolutely no chance this risk will be worth it. Fionn might attack us at any moment. There are several ways. Normally, a necromancer's body is contained in a summoning circle. If that isn't an option, there are spirit marks, certain glyphs. Mage marks, Vance said. When Ivy was attacked when fighting Calder without a body, I used the mark to wake her up.
I turned to him. Wait, you did? I didn't feel it.
You were injured.
He still didn't look too happy.
I suppose a mage mark would do it, said Frank. But I should go. It's not safe for me to linger. If you require my help, Ivy, I'll be waiting.
Yeah, Okay. Damn. Logically, going into the Grey Vale and searching out Fionn instead would be just as likely to end with me joining him for good. Vance took my arm and transported us back to the manor. I pulled free, my mind still spinning. You're overusing your ability again.
I don't care. Ivy, this isn't just dangerous for you. It might affect the spirit lines all over.
I know. I closed my eyes, wishing I could put the universe on pause so I had enough time to figure out what the hell to do. But I can't let this slide. Frank said I can cross over wherever, and it won't make a difference. I'm not a ghost. My magic is different.
But if Fionn learns of your choice, if he attacks your body as Calder did—
Not if I'm at the manor, I said. If you move my body back here after I've crossed over, I'll still be able to reconnect. I can't pretend it isn't risky, but I'll be able to find what Fionn's looking for, no matter how far away it is. Frank wouldn't have told me otherwise. You know how overcautious he is.
He didn't tell us the full truth.
No, he didn't, I said. But this cauldron sounds like a shitload of trouble. If he can put any soul in it and create them a body, imagine what he can do with those half-fairies he has over in the Grey Vale. Considering the she had been the ones to hide it away, I was less than convinced I could find it. But the more I thought about it, the more pieces fell into place. He hadn't been reborn into a new body. He'd need to make one. His promises to the half-bloods had been true all along. But he killed them. For what? A warning? A test? Did he want only the best for his army? Or people who'd never defy him? Eternity was an awfully long time. I didn't want to leave. I wanted to stay here with Vance. Stay human. But if I let this slide, hundreds of she might overrun the world again. I'd always wondered how exactly the army of exiles had been formed. Now it seemed I had my answer.
I don't like this,
said Vance. Nor me. But, like Frank said, you can bring me back with the mage mark. I trust you. He breathed out slowly.
I trust you too, Ivy. But Fionn, he's not like anything you've faced before. Not in human form, or whatever he is now. He might have anticipated this and be waiting on the other side.
I don't think he knows about the council, I said. He won't expect me to know about the cauldron either, I don't think. He wouldn't have anticipated a former necromancer ghost helping me. Anyway, I'm the only one who can move as quickly between realms as he can. I'll cross over, and if anything goes wrong, I'll give you some kind of signal.
Very well,
he said in a resigned tone. I've destroyed talismans before, I said. Even if I don't destroy the cauldron, I can delay him. Or at least I can figure out where it is so we can stop him from reaching it. My ignorance might cost my life, but he couldn't harm my ghost. I still had my magic, body or none. Vance took my hand and teleported me away. We landed on a field.
We're just outside Shifter territory, on a key point.
Okay. I looked across the field. My heart fluttered madly, as though it suspected it might not have reason to beat much longer. Grey clouds, green grass, the buildings in the distance which formed the ragged town I called home. I'll come back. Vance's mouth closed over mine, stealing my words, leaving a trace that went deeper than any mage mark.
Love you,
he said quietly. Same to you. Then I leaned back and shifted into death. Chapter 18. Familiar grey smoke swirled in and out of view as my body turned transparent. The weightless sensation might be familiar from the times I'd crossed over to the Grey Vale, but I'd never entirely get used to it. I drifted on the spot, a tugging sensation pulling me along. The gates. I was being drawn to the gates.
Ivy.
I spun around. Frank floated across from me. I instantly moved into a defensive position.
If you lied to me, I'll kick you into hell. That won't be necessary, he said. You're in the first layer. You're being drawn to the gates, but your magic allows you to fight that instinct. You can walk wherever you like.
Like Theon. Got it. And how do I get to another key point from here?
Follow the lights.
Frank pushed me, and I yelped in surprise as a blue glow enveloped me. I floated in a straight line, as though pulled by a magnet, but it came from the opposite direction to the gates and the ley line. Below my feet, a silvery line ran like a train track, or tram line. Then I stopped, trapped in the weird sensation of shock and surprise without any physical symptoms. My magic lets me cross key points. All very well, but losing my body had taken my sense of direction along with it. The ley line was behind me, assuming I'd moved in the direction I thought I had. Now I concentrated. Magic bloomed around me, providing enough light to see the crossroads I floated at. There were 2 semi-transparent branching paths here, each of which presumably led to another key point. No time like the present. My spirit moved easily, gliding along the faint line underneath my feet. In seconds I stopped, faced with 2 more paths. Maybe returning to the path of the dead might lead the way. The She had picked that spot to imprison Theon for a reason. I moved again, my body gliding weightlessly. Seconds later, I floated at another crossroads. Okay, then. My transparent body collided with a surprisingly solid force. A tall male figure faced me, hands raised to block my path. Alongside him stood several others, transparent, hovering in the smoke. Most appeared human, some with wings or tails. The dead. The spirits of the half-bloods Theon had killed in the Grey Vale. Either he thought I'd stop him, or he wanted to unleash his army already.
Who are you?
My voice echoed oddly, as though I was in an underground tunnel, not in open space.
Nobody passes through here, whispered one of the ghosts.
The others caught his words and repeated them, each one echoing long after it had been spoken. Creepy. This where Theon's going? I attempted to move towards them, but the spirits closed in, blocking my path. Should have known he'd have put a watch on the spirit lines. I didn't have my sword, but I knew how to fight in death. Magic rose to my palms in a warning, but none of them moved. My gaze travelled from a fair-haired, winged half-blood of around 14 years old to a brutish-looking half-troll with fists bigger than my head. Some had shuffled to the back, maybe frightened of the blue light spilling from my hands. They couldn't use magic themselves, at least not until Theon corrupted the lines between the realms again. Magic flared from my hands, engulfing the spirits in a flash of blue light. I couldn't kill them, not when they were already dead, but maybe I could give them a push in the direction of the gates. Problem was, they were facing the wrong way. "What's Theon got you here for?" I asked the nearest.
"To stop anyone crossing between realms,"
whispered a winged half-blood girl with curly black hair. So he was still fixated on the Grey Vale. He thought I was coming back to fight him, not attempting to travel through death itself, which bought me time, but not enough.
Get away from me if you want to last long enough to go into the real world again. Their simmering emotions stirred at my magic. Anger, grief. They hadn't expected or wanted to die. They'd wanted immortality. Yet they served Theon even in death. Maybe they still thought he'd give them their chance. Another blast of magic from my hands knocked two spirits aside, revealing a path branching to the side. I took my chance and moved that way. The spirits attempted to strike me down, but I conjured a shield and moved along. Then I was at the next key point, and the ghosts had gone. I moved on to another key point, then stopped to get my bearings. 2 more key points, and I was on the path of the dead. I knew where I was going now. The crossroads. The place Theon had risen. In the distance, several third bodies lay on the grass. I stopped dead. Pun intended. Hellhounds. This was the spot where they'd invaded. More of them prowled around, appearing to be in both worlds at once. Like me, they could cross realms whenever they wanted. I called magic to me as one of them approached. Its head bowed and shifted into death to pad up to me. I floated, but the hellhound walked as though on solid ground, circling me, not using its fear effect. Don't suppose you'd like to hunt down Theon for me, and stop him from finding what he's looking for? The hellhound growled. The others hadn't moved, though some flicked their heads in my direction. Theon wasn't dead, yet they'd defied him. Why? Not like I could ask. Maybe he'd ditched them in favor of a truly immortal army. Hellhounds could be killed. The hellhound ran alongside me as I moved forward, now certain I'd reached the place where 3 paths converged. The flickering outline of the grey Vale's path appeared and disappeared, while the hillside grew steeper until the glamour gave way, revealing the stone building which once housed Theon's body. I walked around it, finding the area was smaller than I remembered. The trees surrounding the tomb ended abruptly, like a cardboard backdrop. But as a ghost it looked different, transparent. Spirit lines were visible on the other side, and the whole scene looked washed out. Did the necromancers see this all the time? No wonder they were so gloomy. I checked inside the tomb. The runes still remained, but none glowed as they had before. Forget, they said. Maybe I could memory wipe Theon's army, but that wouldn't get rid of him. Stopping him finding the cauldron, wherever it was paramount. Human, growled a voice. Definitely not a hellhound. I spun around. A small figure emerged from behind the tomb. A gnome, I'd guess, but I'd never met one who could talk before. You live here? I asked stupidly. I wasn't here looking for you. I'm looking for something lost in the invasion. Invasion? Is that what you called it? Another laugh. We didn't invade your realm, little girl. We've been here all along. Yeah, I've got that by now. The hellhound appeared to have wandered off. Where had this guy even come from? I looked away, down the spirit line. I wouldn't get answers here, but without a body, I could go to places I hadn't been able to before. Like the forest. Sure, the witches had sealed it for a reason. For all I knew, I wouldn't be able to get in even as a ghost. But they'd known about the ring. They might know the cauldron too. The gnome had disappeared. I was alone by Theon's former tomb, and I didn't have the time to debate. I took off towards the city again, leaving the liminal space and passing along the spirit line, aiming for the forest, hoping I wasn't too late, and that Theon wouldn't have had the same idea.
Even with the smokiness of death surrounding me, the forest was easy to spot. Blotches of darkness where the spirit paths all halted, tangling together. The trees appeared dark, unwelcoming, yet my transparent body passed right through them, as though they didn't exist. The illusionist's path better not trap me as a ghost. I kept moving, hoping I'd have better luck finding the place without a body. My heart sank as the forest lightened, revealing a familiar silver-lit path. I faced the Lady of the Tree.
Part of the god is contained within the mortal realm.
Her voice was a loud whisper, like she stood right next to me. Oh no. I held up my hands. I'm not watching any vision. She continued as though I hadn't spoken.
The other part, in death. But to access it, I need the power of summer and winter combined.
Go away, I told her. Hemlock witches! I yelled into the trees. I need to talk to you. It's urgent. Ivy Lane, growled the old witch. I was trying to help you, you fool. What? I don't have time to watch visions. I spun on the spot, totally discombobulated. The leader of the Hemlock Coven leaned out of the bark of a huge tree on my right. I was still on the path, floating above the tangled roots, and— You left your lair? Cordelia narrowed her eyes at me. I thought you came here to find out how to get rid of the huntsman. More to stop his latest insane plan. Wait a minute. In the vision, the Lady of the Tree had said, part of him contained in death. Was Fionn sealed away like the other god? The life drinker? I trailed off, a horrifying suspicion taking hold of me. Of how Fionn had escaped. Or rather, how Calder had set him free. Calder didn't just free his body, I said slowly. He must have broken the seal on his spirit first, wherever that was trapped, in death. But he couldn't have figured out how to do it alone. Someone must have given him directions. And there was only one possible someone. The person who'd undone a similar spell by gathering an influx of summer and winter energy in one place. A difficult task for a ghost, but considering the forces Calder had been messing with, not impossible. Certainly not with direction from someone who'd done the same. The Hemlock Witch remained quiet, waiting for me to answer. That's the favor the Lady of the Tree gave him. She told him how to free Fionn's spirit. Because she wanted to be reborn herself. The devious old bat. Fionn's spirit would have been sealed in death, as his body was sealed in the tomb. Calder had freed him so he could possess his body, presumably not knowing he was resurrecting an actual death god. How much more trouble could a dead man inflict on my life? But how do I put the seal back on Fionn's spirit? You can't, said the Hemlock Witch. I thought you'd killed him, and this whole matter was done with. As it is, I assume he seeks out the lost cauldron of resurrection. So it's true? This cauldron is real? Does it put a soul back in a body, or create a body? The huntsman's life once revolved around the cauldron, Ivy, croaked the witch. Anyone whose spirit enters the cauldron is given a new body. When they drink from its waters, they become immortal. It's said the cauldron is filled with the blood of the first she, or their gods. The stories vary. I gaped at her, momentarily wordless. Shit. Fairy blood. Is that where Velkos heard? Pull yourself together, Ivy. Who gave a shit about Velkos when Fionn was going to unleash hell?
You know where it is? I have to stop him before he finds it.
The cauldron has changed hands many times. Where it currently is, it can't be hidden anywhere other than the ley line. Nobody would have moved it since the invasion.
On the ley line? Somewhere I know?
The cauldron's original resting place was at the line's end.
Shit, I said. How do you know all this? I know you were on this council, with Quentin and Frank and whoever else died in the invasion.
Yes, she said. I was. The damage Fionn did to our forest when he attacked us was significant. Otherwise, I would have sought you out myself, Ivy. Unless you can get in touch with the She and bring them here, you'll find the cauldron.
Summer won't listen. I can't go into Faerie, and Quentin didn't manage to convince anyone important to come and help. Fionn's gonna bring over an army, and nobody freaking cares. How does he know where to find the cauldron?
Because it was his, originally. She paused. It was the huntsman's job to take souls to the cauldron and unite them with new bodies.
He can use it to make an army, can't he? I asked quietly. That's what his plan is, right?
I suspect so.
So the half-bloods would get their immortality after all. And our realm would have to deal with another influx of She, all of whom would gladly obey Fionn without question. Even if they wouldn't, even if they turned on him, God knew what effects so much magic would have on this realm, and others. Immortal or not, no She created by Fionn would ever be welcome back in the courts. The She and Fionn would be able to rule this realm, or destroy it. Which left me with the task of getting rid of the damn cauldron, or locking it away somewhere. Considering Fionn was immune to invocations, I'd gamble on the cauldron over the ghost. Destroying the cauldron wouldn't finish him off, but it would prevent him making a new army. That was the best I'd get. Thank you for telling me, I said to the witch. Why'd you seal the forest? Because he's coming back. Part of me wanted to say, why aren't you helping us? But their magic had done enough already.
Because we don't trust him not to try and awaken the beast again. Next time, even our magic might not be enough.
Yeah, The words stopped as pain burned through my shoulder, and I was wrenched out of death into life. Chapter 19. The world spun in hazy circles. I lay on my back on the sofa in the Manor's main living room, Vance's hand on my shoulder above the mage mark. Vance? I lifted my head. My body felt numb, but nothing hurt. Furies, he said. Blood stained his arms and shirt, but it had the blue sheen of fairy magic.
They attacked us, but reports are coming in from near the mercenary guild. They've been hiding in the city's center, the abandoned part.
Shit. I staggered to my feet. My body lurched to the side, unbalanced, but I leaned on the sofa to keep upright. Is he here? Fionn?
Not that I've heard. We took care of the first wave of Furies, but they killed several mercenaries. I have council members arriving from outside the city over the next few hours, and I don't want them to get caught up in this. If it is Fionn, he hasn't been sighted, and neither have the half-bloods.
Probably because he killed them, I said, thinking of the ghosts I'd run into. Are you hurt?
No, but I came back here to make sure it wasn't a diversion, so they could get at you.
Vance passed me a mug of the energy restorative he sometimes used. I didn't see them. But I know what Fionn's after.
and it's not here. A cauldron. A cursed Faerie artifact which can make anyone immortal. I sipped the potion, wishing I had time to think. The cauldron, it's Fion's. Or it was. He used to take the bodies or souls of dead fairies there, so they'd be reborn into new bodies. He didn't lie to the half-bloods. They'll get immortality, as part of his army. I coughed, the potion burning my throat. Goddamn fairies and their immortality fixation. Rather than letting their people die in peace, they'd been resurrected as immortal once again. It sounded like a special kind of hell. Vance watched me calmly, but his grey eyes burned with anger.
I see. So he intentionally led them to follow his every whim, even if he intended to kill them before fulfilling his promise. Whereabouts is this cauldron? Did you find out?
I spoke to the witches. They said the cauldron must be on the ley line, at the end of the line. But there isn't one. I mean, the line covers the whole globe, technically. I could have followed it, but Fion has his ghosts floating around, stopping anyone getting into the Grey Veil. I reckon he's searching on his own. But he has the same ability I do. And he's owned the cauldron before, so he knows where to look. Vance cursed quietly, looking down at his phone.
The mercenaries are under attack again. This isn't a random ambush. They're targeting Lawson's place.
Shit. I drained the rest of the bitter-tasting liquid. I'm coming.
Are you sure?
Like I'd lie here and let them die. Even Lawson. Okay, maybe I wouldn't shed a tear if he died, but I wouldn't leave him to be slaughtered at the hands of a mob of furies. I need to figure out my plan. Where the end of the ley line is. I grabbed my sword, relieved to find my other weapons remained in place. I moved slower than I'd have liked, but I wouldn't be disconnecting with my body again until I knew where to look for the cauldron.
Ivy, are you sure?
Positive. I can't let the Furies attack anyone else. He's directing them. Which meant he was still here. He didn't need to be in a hurry to find the cauldron, not when he could raise literal hell as a ghost. I couldn't stop him, not directly. I could kill off his army before he had the chance to form it, because my magic could destroy the dead. Except him. Vance swore at his phone.
There are reports of an opening to the Grey Veil.
What? Oh no. Maybe he hadn't figured out where the cauldron was, but he and his ghost army could do enough damage to this realm. I wouldn't abandon the mages while they needed me. Vance took my hand, and we disappeared, landing in near darkness. A swarm blotted out the sky, like ink spilled across the surface. They can't all be Furies. No, there were too many, and too small. Birds, not Furies. The clamour of 1,000 bird cries drowned out all other sound.
Crows,
Vance suggested. He held a sword in one hand. The Morrigan? Shit. I'm sure I heard she's accompanied everywhere by a swarm of crows. I tore my gaze away and scanned the road outside the mercenary guild. Nobody seemed to be around. Where's this door to the Vale supposed to be? Vance took the lead, rounding the corner to the neighbouring street. Only then did my ears pick up the screaming, covered by the noise the birds were making. A huge winged shape descended from the sky, grabbing at the humans in the road. "Hey!" I yelled, brandishing my sword. Magic kicked in, flooding my body with energy, and I ran alongside Vance to meet our enemy. The Furies had surrounded a cluster of blocks of flats, similar to the one Isabel and I used to live in, except, judging by the screams coming from inside, without witch wards to keep the fairies at bay. 2 Furies had landed on the roof and ripped off tiles, while another collided with the window in a shower of glass. Several people, mercenaries, ran through the street, waving swords and knives in the air, but the Furies flew too high and moved too fast. Wait, this wasn't far from where Liam had lived before the Furies killed him. "The hell is that?" yelled a mercenary, throwing a dagger into the air. It'd actually have been a good shot, but the Fury moved aside and the dagger fell, point down at the mercenaries below. Vance waved a hand and the weapon reappeared in front of its owner, who spun around in confusion. "Whoa! Mage Lord!"
"Backup's on the way,"
he told the stupefied mercenaries, and we launched into an attack. Not holding back, I fired a blast of energy from one palm at the Fury on the roof. The beast screamed, a bloody hole in its chest, and toppled onto the lawn. They were scary as hell. 7-foot-long, black and red feathered beasts with deadly claws, and with a similar fear effect to hellhounds. As I brought down a second Fury, a black car skidded to a halt at the roadside, knocking over a lamppost. Drake jumped out, followed by several other mages. The Furies spun around in the air, emitting horrible screeching noises as they found their new targets. Drake rose to the challenge, climbing on top of the car to shoot fireballs at them. Good, because this is probably a diversion. Too bad I had no freaking clue how to stop Theon when he was beyond life and death. Worse, the swarm of birds remained in the sky. A sign belonging to the Morrigan, Roseanne's mother. If she was here, I had to get her away from Theon, before she met the same fate as the Banshee. I ran onto the mercenaries' lawn to fight off the Fury, which had broken the front window, sheathing my blade in its neck. Now the mages had shown up, most of the Furies had flocked over that way, and to Vance, who stood in the center, using his ability to knock them out of the air so the others could reach them. I ran to his side, Helena's keen edge severing claws and biting into feathered flesh. Magic burned through my veins like wildfire. I'd never felt it this strongly here, in this realm. The Furies had brought a shit ton of death energy along with them, even if I couldn't use their own pain to power my weapon. 3 dived at Drake in unison, but the fire mage conjured a tongue of flame, sending them reeling away from the heat. More bursts of fire came from the 2 other fire mages fighting at his back. "Where are they even coming from?" he yelled at Vance.
"That way!"
Vance brought another Fury down, displacing his knife to cut the beast's throat. He pointed over the roofs, in the direction of the canal. They'd probably been lurking nearby all along, feeding on unsuspecting nighttime wanderers. The area was full of enough nasty monsters, and nobody would have noticed a few giant, black, bird-like monstrosities if they'd used glamour to hide themselves. The only time they'd risked drawing attention had been when Roseanne ordered them to attack people, by Theon's command. "So, where's this door into the Grey Vale?" I asked of nobody in particular, firing a burst of magical energy from my palms and striking down another Fury. I'd struck hard enough to kill it in one go. But we needed to root out the bastards at their source if we were to have any hope of stopping them. The birds didn't help. As the Fury I'd hit fell in a shower of wings, I risked a look at the crows. They appeared lit from behind by a ghostly light. Oh, hell. The glamour shifted a little, and I caught a glimpse of what lurked behind. The opening to the veil was in the sky. How the hell was anyone meant to close it? More to the point, where was the Morrigan? Magic exploded from my hands in twin blue torrents, surging into the sky and piercing the clouds. The sound of 100 crows crying out hit my eardrums, but the birds disappeared when I struck them. Not real birds, then. I'd thought as much. They kept too still, packed closely together.
"They're still coming,"
said Vance, indicating the Fury he'd knocked out of the air with a well-timed attack. "Look behind those crows," I said, running to his side. "The door into the Vale. It's in the sky. I can't close it. The birds aren't real, they're a glamour. Vance cursed and joined 2 lightning mages in bringing down another fury. The beast crashed onto the nearest roof. Someone would have to pay for property damage. Drake jumped down from the car.
Just got an update from the group you sent north. There are a dozen more furies coming this way.
A crow's cry tore through the air, drawing all our attention. The cloud of birds rippled, and beyond, the sight of a handful of dark, clawed shapes turned my blood to ice. "Shit," I said. A deafening crack split the sky as surely as a bolt of lightning. Except instead of a flash of light, there came a shower of blood and feathers onto the road, followed by the thud of several bodies hitting the tarmac. Vance swayed on the spot. I ran to him. "Whoa, you okay?"
"Yes."
His mouth pinched, but he stayed in position. "Don't overextend yourself yet. We've got trouble." Sure enough, the surviving furies had figured out Vance was the one who'd attacked them, and dived towards us in a sweep of wings. I got there first, decapitating one of them before its claws could spear me. I called magic around me in a shield, but I couldn't protect everyone at once. The mages divided into smaller groups to stop the furies from flying at the remaining mercenaries, while I aimed for the ones which flew too high to reach. With magic, I attacked them in the air. If they survived the hit, they'd be knocked low enough for the others to reach. The flock of furies had split, but too many kept coming. I was pretty sure it was impossible to open a summoning circle up in the sky, which meant they'd come directly from the veil. 2 furies fell, their throats cut, as Vance used his ability to move twin swords through the air and disrupt their fighting lines. The other mages closed in, fire and frost and lightning engulfing the attackers. The mercenaries had been pushed to the side. Several had fled to safe hiding places. I didn't blame them at this point. A human would be hard-pressed to take down even one fury. As a lull in the fighting followed, I leaned on the wall to catch my breath, while Vance applied a healing spell to both our wounds.
"There are too many of them,"
he said.
"Theon must have hid them inside the veil itself."
I glared up at the never-ending swarm of crows. "I can technically cross over now, if I wanted to. But I'd run right into the rest of the furies. Plus, I'm almost certain the Morrigan's involved. The birds are her signature. If Roseanne's here..." I didn't know what I'd do. The vow he'd put on her must still be in effect, in which case she'd kill me or die trying.
"It has to be a diversion," Vance said. "I have mages watching every corner of the city to see if he's planning to take us off guard."
"Good move." I looked up. "I'm going to attack the birds again. Ready?" Vance nodded, his eyes darkening, and I raised Helena. A stream of energy split through the horde of crows, blue light mingling with the grey. I tensed, waiting for another wave of furies, but they never came. Instead, a single bird descended, smaller than the other furies, more like a human-sized crow than a demonic hell beast. Oh God. Roseanne. "Wait!" I called to the mages. "She's half-blood, Theon's prisoner."
"Not the half-blood who brought them to us."
Drake shot me a look of disbelief, but I ignored it, running to where she'd touched down on the road. Not attacking. Not yet, anyway. "Hold on," I said to Roseanne. "You don't have to." Her talons lashed out, catching on my sword. "I have to kill you, Ivy," she growled through her hooked beak. "Stop!" I pushed my shield outward, between me and her. "Fight it!" But it was no use. The vow would compel her to kill me no matter what. If I stalled, or found another way to stop her, the furies would take her down. "Kill her!" yelled one of the mages. And all hell broke loose. The crow illusion disappeared entirely, as another wave of furies fell on the mages and the remaining mercenaries. Some had fled, and I didn't blame them. Screaming noises rent the air, but all my attention was on Roseanne. She fought against me, but couldn't break through my shield. A fury flew at me from behind. I slashed with Helena, forcing it to fall back into Vance's path, where he cut it down. Roseanne tried to strike me again, but I deflected her talons with magic. Even holding back, the defensive move sent her head over heels. Damn it, Roseanne, snap out of it! I shot magic from my palms and knocked a group of furies into confusion, where the mages set upon taking them down. Vance moved to my side.
You can't make her see reason.
He struck down another fury, his claws slick with blood.
Ivy, she's the enemy.
Only because Theon wants her to be. I won't give him the satisfaction of making me kill her.
Ivy, now's not the time to play head games with that bastard Faerie.
Roseanne ran at me again, and I called up another shield. She screamed, slashing at it with her claws. It took little effort to hold her off me, but if a beast stronger than a fury showed up, I was in trouble. Why aren't you fighting me? Because you're a pawn in a fairy's game. You shouldn't die for it. I have to kill you! She ended on a scream as her feathered body caught on fire. Her feathers blazed, and fear shone in her bird-like eyes. Drake, stop that! Fight the Furies instead! She's been sent to kill me, no one else. She nearly killed Wanda. He advanced on her, directing the flames with his hands. But one look at Vance's face told me he thought the same as Drake. I didn't blame him. I wanted to give her a good thwack on the head, but death was final, and I'd be playing into Theon's hands no matter what I did. And the Furies wouldn't stop coming. More and more descended through the now obvious gap in the sky, and Roseanne ran at me, claws striking at my shield. Panic was etched on her face. She didn't want this. She didn't deserve it. I reached into my pocket and threw a knockout spell in her face. Roseanne gasped, then slumped to the ground. My heart twisted. It wasn't fair. She'd tried to kill Wanda, or at least been partly responsible, but Theon and the Banshee had been pulling the strings. I needed to kill him for good. Sure would help to know where the cauldron was, too. The end of the line. I spun around and spotted Vance fighting a wave of Furies alongside two other mages. He used his ability to break their necks from the ground, but the wave showed no signs of slowing. I fired magic up at the clouds and knocked several more Furies out of flight. A flash of green light shot past my head and collided with a Fury. Then another. I gaped, looking around for the source. That was fairy magic. Summer magic. Seelie. My heart lifted despite myself. Had Faerie answered our call after all? As a third light appeared, several armored figures ran into view, firing magic up at the sky, led by the chief. Wait, he hadn't run away into the forest.
Ivy Lane,
he said, backing up to fight off another Fury. Oh, it's you. That's just the level of ingratitude I'd expect from a human, he snarled. Whoa, sorry. I was hoping Summer would show up and help. If they don't now, they never will, he said. The chief was bleeding from one arm, and it looked like he'd fought his way here. Shit, were they attacking the rest of town too? I thought you'd cleared off, I said, or got crushed when the jail fell. Several of my allies helped me escape, he said. I've been gathering anyone willing to take a stand. Our territory was wrongfully taken from us. We want to win it back. That's more surprising than possibly anything that had happened today, actually. I thought the chief would either run or cave into Theon's demands, or lose all his allies to the huntsman's plan. "Some of us have built a home here in this realm," he said, "and we don't want to see it torn to pieces." "You and me both." A fury dived at him. Without thinking, I shot a blast of magic at its chest, and it fell in a mass of feathers and blood. "I can defend myself," snapped the chief. "All right, I'll leave you in peace then." Seriously. Vance covered several injured mages by directing the Furies away from them, his claws tearing into any Fury who got too close. He must be tiring by now. We needed more backup, or some way to close the door into the Vale. The chief moved to my side. "What's she doing here?" He indicated Roseanne, who I'd covered with my shield. "She was forced to fight me against her will. I used a knockout spell on her." "Any clue how to break a Faerie's vow?" "You can't. Not if it was Fionn who bound her. She has to fulfill the terms of the vow one way or another." "Not even if I use an invocation?" "You can't use the language of the gods lightly." "My sword came from a god. The magic inside it, anyway." "What?" He stopped fighting and nearly got his head torn off. I stabbed the attacking Fury, splattering us both with blood. "You should know by now there's more to Faerie than your two courts. The Life Drinker talisman is the same, the talisman the Lady of the Tree stole." His eyes bulged. "You did not tell me that." "Didn't I?" I suppose I hadn't. Our conversations had never been long, and he'd been pissed enough at me taking Avocus's talisman for my own. He knew I owned the Life Drinker, but not where its power source came from. "If you'd come to speak to the Mage Council when we'd invited you, you'd know. The Life Drinker sword is the same as mine. It was carried by someone who lived in the Grey Vale, and contains the magic belonging to a god. Only thing is, with mine, I don't know which god it was. But I guess it explains why I can walk into death and use magic in ways even the she can't." The chief looked like he might faint. I decapitated another Fury, feeling almost sorry for him. "So if you know an invocation which can break a Faerie vow, it'd be great." "There isn't one." He shook his head. "It's bad enough you wielding our magic, but the gods... No, it's not possible. You should be dead." "I nearly died when I spoke the invocation the first time." "You can't speak them in this realm," he said. "Except when the veil is thin and the worlds are coming together. They require a surge of power. You! I'd rendered the poor guy speechless. "The first time, Calder had turned the whole town into a summoning circle," I told him, flicking Fury blood off my sword. "The second time, I was in the Grey Vale with 2 talismans. That's when I bound the god. And when I used the forgetfulness spell on all those ghosts, I was standing next to Fionn's old tomb, where the glyphs were still there. But they didn't work on him." "The gods alone know why, Ivy." "Yeah, I guess they probably do. Not that I could go and ask them for answers." "Where—" The sky split with a noise loud enough to wake the dead. 100 or more winged shapes descended, and my heart stopped. "There are too many. We can't beat them." Except they weren't Furies, but birds. Hundreds, no, thousands, plunging towards the earth. "The Morrigan comes!" yelled the chief, and he ran in the opposite direction, his people not far behind. "You traitorous bastard!" I screamed after him. I threw a magical shield up, covering the street above the mages, and not a second too soon. The crows collided with a rippling crash, and I bit down on a scream as my whole body shook with the impact. The birds converged, swirling in a circle, like a descending whirlpool of feathers. My heart contracted. Oh no. Oh shit, no. The birds had become one giant beast, bigger than any Fury. The Morrigan was the size of a house, at least. Thick wings spread on either side, and cruel talons dug into the road. Angry red-orange eyes burned into mine like lasers. "You," growled the crow in a booming voice. No hiding what I was, not with a she's talisman at my side. I approached her, instinctively moving closer to Roseanne. But the Morrigan's eyes were on me, not her daughter. Her wings moved, and a current of air slammed into my shield. The other mages weren't moving. In fact, they all appeared to be frozen. Shit. She's using fear magic. But not on me. "Let them go," I told her. "This is our fight, not theirs. And for the record, if you're working for Theon, you're on my hit list." Her eyes locked with mine, and a deep, visceral fear shot through my whole body. My legs locked to the spot. Cold sweat slid down my back. Primal terror took root in my soul, more potent than any hellhound's fear effect. I saw my own death reflected in her eyes, as her claw came down and tore through the center of the road, cutting Roseanne off from the rest of us. "She is mine." "You never claimed her when she was in control of her own will." "I left her to her human family, who abandoned her to keep her away from you." "So you're claiming her now? She's already bound to Theon. I take it you're working for him too." "I came for her." Damn it. Roseanne was cut off from me. I couldn't move, and neither could anyone else. The air current hit my magical shield, and this time it fizzled out. Fear spread through me, thick and unyielding. The other mages couldn't move, not even as she raised her wings and sent a second vicious air current at us. Screams broke through my stupor, and glass shattered somewhere in the distance. My legs buckled. Everyone was locked into place. We were all going to die. "Come on, magic. I need you." The world distorted. Too late, I realized what was happening and tried to scream Vance's name, but the words were lost on the way to my mouth. And then we weren't in the road anymore, but the manor's living room. I fell forward as the spell broke, but managed to stay upright. Vance swayed on the spot, and I was just in time to catch him as he collapsed. Chapter 20.
"This is a situation and a half," muttered Drake. I nodded in agreement, unable to say a word more. The Morrigan's army had near fatally injured 5 mages. If not for Vance's quick actions, they'd be dead. But with their leader out of commission, chaos reigned. He'd been unconscious for 2 hours and counting. Small mercy that the Morrigan had disappeared back into the Vale, taking her daughter with her. Isabel's knockout spell had done a hell of a job. We'd killed dozens of fairies. Theon would be pissed. He'd have backup in reserve, and only Vance's condition kept me from crossing over to the Vale before I had no choice in the matter. At least he didn't look like he was in pain, but a sheen of sweat covered his forehead, and all the color had drained from his face. His claws had disappeared, and I held onto his hand and squeezed it. No response. "Will he wake up?" My voice came out as a croak. I'd resisted asking the question, knowing it wasn't the first time Vance had overexerted himself using his ability. "Sure," said Drake. "He's pretty resilient." "Has he ever transported this many people, though?" "Well, no. 4 is the maximum limit, and it's not advised. And he's been shifting too, right?" "Yeah." Oh, God. I buried my head in my hands. I should have just stayed in death. Or caught Roseanne first. I screwed this up.
If I hadn't been so stupid as to pity her, to want to talk things over with the Morrigan.
She wouldn't have listened to reason. But it's not your fault.
Yeah, Vance would say so. But if he dies...
He won't die. Vance has had people try to kill him every other week since he was a kid. He'll be fine. Besides, we'll stop Fionn first.
The chief actually abandoned us. I hope he got pecked to death.
The mercenaries ran away too, he said. They said they were going to Larson's to ask why he didn't involve himself in the fighting. Larson was your boss, right?
Yeah, and he's probably hiding in his basement.
We were on our own.
Drake sighed.
Lady Penrose wants to step in as leader. I'm outvoted. We can't bring in the others from outside the region without Vance.
Shit. The Mage Council would never take my word for it either. Only a handful of mages had seen the Morrigan, and Fionn hadn't shown his face at all. This can't be delayed. If Fionn didn't come in person, he must be looking for the cauldron.
For what?
Cursed Faerie artifact, which can give anyone an immortal body, including himself. There was a pause, in which Drake looked at me incredulously.
Seriously?
I stood, letting go of Vance's hand. Yeah, it's hidden on the ley line, according to the Hemlock Witches. At the end of the line, wherever that is.
Scotland?
Is it?
The tip of Scotland was the first place the fairies were seen when the invasion started. My parents used to work in communications up in Aberdeen. That's how I know.
I blinked. I didn't. Well, if it's true, might there be a pocket universe containing a giant cauldron there?
Maybe, but you won't convince the council to come with you.
There's not much anyone without fairy magic can do. Maybe not even me. He's not a ghost, he's a wraith. And he's hunting for an artifact which can give him a body with built-in immortality. How the hell do you destroy something like that?
You don't, said Drake. You put it somewhere nobody can find it. Isn't that what you did with the dragon?
Yeah, but if I go after him, I'm abandoning you guys. Besides, he probably already knows where it is.
Then you have to beat him to it. If not, Vance said I can use the mage mark to get you back into your body, right?
Yeah, I can cross over from anywhere, but... I stopped, torn in two. If I left and Fionn attacked, it'd be my fault. If I didn't leave, and Fionn found the cauldron by himself, I'd be partially responsible for that, too. Add in the Morrigan, and nothing I did would prevent one or both of our enemies from coming after my friends. I took in a shuddering breath, and leaned to kiss Vance on the forehead. Then I let go of his hand. I'll come back, I murmured. Right. I need to get to the nearest key point on the ley line, or a safe place where I won't bring Furies after you. Only I can't drive. Unless you don't mind me wrecking one of your cars.
Wouldn't be the first time,
said Drake.
Are you sure?
The doorbell rang. I jumped. Are you expecting anyone?
The council from out of town? Maybe it's them.
Damn. When they found out Vance was out of action, they'd step in and take over. Which would mean I'd have to convince yet more people about Fionn. Faerie! Someone shouted. I grabbed Helena and ran for the door. Nobody else would die on my watch. A boy stood on the lawn outside the manor. Crystal blue eyes watched me below tousled blonde curls. He wore jeans and a t-shirt and scuffed shoes. He didn't look a day older than 16, but was definitely half fairy. Ivy Lane. He spoke with a distinct Irish accent. Fionn wishes to invite you to his realm before he uses the vow you made to cause you trouble. What? I'm not under a vow. I had made a vow with him to get him to heal Isabel before he died. Tell Fionn to fuck off from me. Better yet, tell him to come and fight me on his own territory and leave my friends alone. And the damned Morrigan can screw off too. He said you have no choice. Come with him, or they'll die. He didn't sound particularly sad about it. More like he was reading from a script. He'd have been put under a vow too. They all had. Nobody in their right mind would obey Fionn of their own free will. Aside from the Morrigan, maybe, but she clearly had her own agenda. Don't I at least get to make a phone call first? Isabel and I had briefly spoken, just to check on one another. Apparently, aside from the birds, the attack hadn't spread to her part of town yet. I advised her to stay indoors. Drake moved to my side. You can't leave. Sorry. I gave him a look which communicated, keep Vance safe for me. I didn't dare look towards the manor. Otherwise, I wasn't sure I'd have it in me to leave. I'm sorry. Vance, I'm so sorry. You have my word, said the boy. I've no idea who you are, so I'm not trusting you. Don't you care what I am, Ivy? I am she. He brought us into his realm a long time ago. Fionn won't win this, I said. Whatever he's promised is a lie. He cares for nobody but himself. I'm only the messenger, Ivy Lynn. Lane, I really couldn't give a shit. Take me to him, so I can put him out of his misery. Being a wraith can't be fun. As you wish. He turned and walked across the grounds to the gates. You can't open a way into the Grey Vale here. He smiled at me, with sparkling white teeth. I'm half she, with all the powers of my fairy kin. I can walk wherever I like. Yeah, right. Half-bloods can't normally move between realms. He's giving you a boost. And knowing Fionn, there'd be a price to pay for it. I wasn't unarmed. I carried my iron daggers, as well as my sword, both to use on his minions and to use as a last resort if he did get a new body. But, of course, his spirit wouldn't stay dead. He'd keep coming back, keep trying again, until my life and my realm had extinguished. The half-she skipped ahead, ignoring me, and the air shimmered above the road, silver lights spilling onto the tarmac. I expected to see the Grey Vale. I sure as hell didn't expect Fionn's wraith form to extend a hand, beckoning me into Faerie. So he hadn't gone after the cauldron. He wanted me out of the way first. I took in a breath. He beckoned again. The message was clear. Follow him, or my friends would pay the price. I ran, putting every ounce of fairy magic-enhanced energy into my speed and leaping over the threshold into the Vale. The second Fionn's wraith form passed over me with an icy chill, I jumped out of my body and threw myself at him. My spirit collided with him like he was a solid human, one hand reaching for his neck, the other wielding a handful of magic. I twisted and kicked at him, using my bodiless state to evade his attempts to throw me off. He couldn't get a grip on me, while his servant watched on the side, apparently too freaked out by my abrupt disembodied leap to do anything about it. Once, when I'd fought Calder Spirit, I'd conjured the likeness of a sword. I imagined the blue energy streaming from my hands, coalescing into the shape of a talisman. It wasn't my body which could shift through realms, but something else. Faerie had altered my very soul. I envisioned the magic in my hands forming the shape of Helena, from hilt to tip. The image flashed before my eyes, and my magic swirled in blue threads. The faint outline of a sword became more distinct, pointing directly at Fionn. He laughed.
What did I tell you, Ivy? Your magic and mine are too similar to fight one another, and you owe me, Ivy.
I don't owe you a thing. You died. Our vow is null and void." He raised a hand, and my spirit was thrown head over heels. The world inverted, the air whipped by, and the next second I was pinned to the ground. I swore and tried to lift my head. My body remained where I'd left it, hands dangling at my sides, one still gripping my sword.
Ivy Lane, the bane of my existence. I didn't know you'd already worked out how to spirit travel. I wanted to establish more trust between us before I taught you that side of your power.
Ugh. I wouldn't take lessons from you.
Wouldn't you? I've never seen your magic without the talisman, without the taint of him around it. You really are unique.
You really are creeping me the hell out. I want a fair chance to beat you. I'll duel you for the right to the cauldron. Another figure melted out of the trees, closed in behind me, and put a knife to my body's neck. Damn it. I fell back into my body, the backlash nearly sending me forward into the knife's point. My elbow drove back into the ribs of the person who'd put their blade in my neck. The half-fairy fell back, gasping, as I kicked his legs out from underneath him. I kicked him again, while Theon's ghost turned on me with an aggrieved expression.
There's no reason to attack my companions.
If they've chosen to serve the likes of you, they deserve it. I stomped on the foot of the man who'd grabbed me. Unseelie, with neon blue eyes and punky spiked hair.
You chose to come here,
said Theon.
That means you choose this realm over the mortal one.
Nothing remotely like it, I said through gritted teeth. I have a question. Why can you use magic as a ghost? I thought it was tied to your talisman.
The She might see fit to store their power in trinkets and other objects. I think differently.
He gave me another serial killer smile.
As do you. You passed over the veil in the middle of the street, Ivy, without the ley line as an anchor. That confirms your magic is indeed like mine. From your behavior, I would guess you do know where the cauldron of resurrection is.
No, I don't. Not a lie. I only had guesses to draw on. But I think it's wasted on you. You should just suck it up and die like a normal person.
Death is not natural to our kind.
Oh, cry me a fucking river. You have your magic, you have your servants. The only thing you don't have is a body, and it's a just enough punishment for trying to destroy my realm. Damn it all. If I spirit-travelled now in an attempt to find the cauldron, he'd come along for the ride.
Your people seem to have misplaced something else. Kaelin?
Theon smiled at the blonde half-she, who held out a sword which looked too heavy for him to carry. He had the life-drinker. Shit on a stick.
With this talisman, I can fight you. My magic can conquer yours, but yours cannot hurt mine.
My heart sank, a pit opening inside me like I'd disconnected from my body again. You can't, I said. The talisman is mine. I won it. You can't take it from me.
Then we'll duel for it. You win, and you get the cauldron. You lose, and I get this talisman.
Shit. He was dead. I couldn't win. My magic had no effect on him, and neither did my sword. If I conceded, I'd lose my world and the spare talisman, and God knew what else he'd stolen from the storeroom. The invocations. He laughed at the horror on my face.
Oh, Ivy, you didn't really think you could beat me, could you?
He lunged forward and stabbed me through the chest. all energy sapped from my body. I sank to my knees, an icy chill spreading through my bones. He hadn't stabbed me with a weapon, but as a wraith, he was a weapon. His touch was cold enough to burn. He was a wraith with 1,000 times the power of regular spirits. If I gave in, he'd win. My realm would fall, and everyone I knew would die. My body didn't listen. His hand twisted inside me, and I screamed. How could he hurt me without a physical body? "Do something!" I yelled at the half-fairies. "He's psychotic, and if you don't—" I cut off in another scream as he pushed my spirit loose from my body. Oh God, tell me I'm not dead. I floated, his hand still locked around me. His ghostly grey form looked inhuman now.
"Ivy Lane," he snarled. "You don't know who I really am, and I suppose I can't fault you for your ignorance. My job for the courts revolved around removing and reuniting spirits and bodies. You belong to me, as per the vow you made when I was alive. I can snuff you out like a candle, or I can crush your physical body with one blow. Your choice."
My breath came out in desperate pants. His half-blood servants closed in around my body, where I lay, loosely gripping my sword. My ghost had nothing on him. I was right. I'd underestimated him by a mile, and everyone I loved would pay the price. I closed my eyes. I'm sorry. If I concede to you, you'll get the talisman. I get my body back. Right?
"Right you are, Ivy,"
he breathed in my ear. Then let go. Chapter 21. I fell back into my body, gasping for breath. Oh, no. Oh, God, no. He had more than enough weapons without adding the life drinker. What else did you steal from the mages?
"You're scared I took your invocations?" He laughed. "I know them all by heart, Ivy. Besides, they wouldn't have done you any good."
Okay, he didn't take them. But he can. He could walk anywhere he liked. Everything, the fates of everyone I knew, depended on me not pissing him off any more than I already had. I pushed to my feet, readjusting my grip on Helena. My body shook, like he'd choked me for real, not my ghost. Sure as hell felt real, anyway. Ouch.
"Come with me, Ivy."
The vow rang through my body, through my spirit, and my feet walked without me consciously guiding them. The forest's path stretched ahead, and Fionn headed downhill, for all the world like a king amongst his subjects, except for being a wraith, that is. I followed, not like I had much of a choice. Fionn didn't look back to make sure I was behind him. Guess he figured he didn't need to check, not when he had me by the neck, whether he used the vow or not. My only consolation was that as long as I was with him, he wasn't attacking my friends. My heart twisted. I'd left Vance in the worst state possible. If he died, whether Fionn was immortal or not, once he had a body, at least I'd have the satisfaction of ripping out his still-beating heart. Magic seethed around me, as if it had more of a reason to be furious with him than I did. Fionn paused, as its blue tendrils wrapped around his neck from behind, as though to strangle him.
"Ivy."
I'm not doing that, I said. My magic wants to choke you to death. What exactly did you do to Avocus to make him hate you so much?
"That's for me to know."
He resumed walking. Well, floating. Damn it, he does know. Now he has his memories back. To add insult to injury, he held the life drinker. Underhanded though his methods might be, the talisman belonged to him, and unlike the Lady of the Tree, he was strong enough to use it. The silver-leafed trees folded back, leading the way uphill. This time, when the castle appeared, it didn't fade. Apparently, we didn't need to cross the Bridge of Cloud either, because in no time the massive castle was right in front of us. I stopped walking, a sick taste in my mouth. He'd replicated Avocus's castle, almost exactly, down to every turreted tower and arrow-slit window. "How pretentious," I said. He laughed.
"I thought you'd say that, Ivy."
"You don't know me. Whatever his vow made me do, my will was my own, and he couldn't break it. Hell, he couldn't take away my magic either. Not when it hated him so much. Maybe I can work with that."
"I know you, Ivy," said Fionn. "I heard a fair bit of intriguing information about you from that former boss of yours."
My mouth dropped open. "You spoke to Larson?"
"Pity for him. Most of the information was useless."
"That's because I quit. Larson and I didn't see eye to eye. So he's dead, huh?"
"You disliked the man, yes?"
"He was a dick. But the mercenaries will be pissed no one's around to pay them for risking their necks against your furies. Any reason you tried to kill the mercenaries? We weren't friends."
"But you wanted to help your half-blood."
"Roseanne? I wanted her to decide whether to kill me of her own volition. You took away her choice. She's 13 years old. I realize you don't have a shred of compassion, but your half-bloods do. They won't all obey you forever."
"That's where you're wrong."
Fionn paused in front of the castle's entrance as twin wooden doors opened.
"My army,"
he said softly. Oh my God. Half-fairies filled the space inside the entrance hall. There were hundreds of them, most possibly human-looking, summer and winter magic combining to give them an inhuman glow. "You're planning to kill and revive them in the cauldron, like you promised?" I raised an eyebrow. "Wow. I'm waiting for the catch." His teeth flashed white in a grin.
"I offer them dreams, and who can refuse?"
"So you want me to come and watch your rebirth?"
"No."
His smile turned feral.
"As though I'd ever let you near the cauldron. No. You're going to stay here, Ivy."
My knees buckled under the force of the words. The vow. Damn it. I couldn't move, not even to look up at the half-bloods as he walked inside and spoke to them. Two approached me. I could no more stop them from grabbing me than cut off my own hand. Between them, they hauled me into the castle. Inside was as opulent as outside, all marble and glass, balconies and frescoes. Yet strangely empty, once they'd dragged me through the entrance hall and up a curving staircase. All the half-bloods must be downstairs, waiting for Fionn. He floated behind me as they led me up another staircase and into a room the same size as the one Vance and I shared at the manor, complete with a balcony. He'd copied it exactly. My throat went dry as raw fear pounded through me. He spied on me. Or he'd been to the manor, where I'd left Vance with the other mages, completely unprepared for an attack.
"Leave her sword," he told the half-bloods. "I'll remove it from her when I return with my new body. In fact, I wish to have a word with you, Ivy, before we leave."
The two half-bloods bowed and left, closing the door behind them. Cold sweat ran down my neck, and my hands trembled with the effort of fighting the vow.
"Don't,"
he said.
"It'll only be more uncomfortable for you if you struggle."
I'll teach you what uncomfortable means, I said through gritted teeth. Who the hell do you think you are? Forcing me to stand by your side isn't going to win you this realm or any other. Everyone knows you're a liar, Fionn.
Those half-bloods downstairs say differently.
That's because you brainwashed them. It must be lonely, being dead. I gave him a look of pure disdain. I'm not afraid of you, no matter what you do to me. This realm gave me its worst while I was a human without magic. I'm not that girl anymore.
Yet you caved in so easily.
You bound me to your word. I'll learn how to break it. There must be a way. My magic despised him. We were polar opposites, not allies.
I doubt so, Ivy.
He gave a dramatic sigh.
This isn't what I wanted. The first invasion should have toppled the courts and restored order, but the Sidhe were more devious than I had reason to believe.
You don't get to try your sob stories on me.
Wouldn't you like to hear a real story?
Asked Fionn.
A long time ago, a territory dispute between summer and winter fairies led to bloodshed, as they sometimes did. When I was brought in to clear up the mess, as per my agreement as leader of the Wild Hunt, I witnessed an argument about what to do with the dissenters who survived the battle. The Sidhe wished to exile them, possibly to the mortal realm. I made my own suggestion. You see, when I ferried the souls of the lost into death, I'd come to discover a corner of Faerie, which was little inhabited, and, interestingly, without magic at all. As a solution to their dilemma, I proposed that I would take the exiles with me into this magic-free land, and leave them there until they expired.
A cruel smile curled his lips.
The first Sidhe had used all the powers of creation they possessed to tear apart a corner of the fairy realm in order to contain the gods which once ruled their territories. However, the Grey Veil, once it was born, became its own entity, shaped by every exile who passed through it. The realm thrived, and the lords of Faerie had no idea. They let me build an army under their nose, and didn't even know me for a traitor until I moved into the Grey Veil myself, to join the Sidhe who'd survived their exile.
So you betrayed the courts 100 times over, I said. You know, I'd almost feel sorry for you if you hadn't killed millions of people because summer and winter wouldn't cave into your every demand.
The damage was unfortunate. Humans did nothing to help their case by panicking and trampling one another. I rather think they killed more of their own people than we did.
Nice try. I crossed my arms. Just admit you're screwed up, Fionn, and we'll be on the same page.
I'd be a fool to deny my nature, Ivy. I merely wanted to dispel the rumors your people spread after the invasion. The Sidhe, or perhaps the mages, spread stories that your people were on the brink of war, and the Sidhe heroically intervened to prevent it from happening. To soften the blow, perhaps, because you couldn't face the fact that you'd been brought so low. No. It was I who started the war myself. You can't imagine. It was like breaking from a cage. For the Sidhe, eternity is unyielding. Things are. Nobody questions what life might be like if things were different. So I showed them.
My breath hitched. You shouldn't have messed with us. You know the vision the witches showed me in the forest. You warned Avocus the humans would learn to poke back. You were right.
So that's what you saw,
he mused.
It's too late for you to challenge me, But I thought you ought to know the odds, and the price you pay for not standing alongside me of your own free will. I am stronger than any she of the courts, stronger than any talisman. The ring might have been my undoing, but it is gone now. Thanks to you, Ivy. You disposed of my last weakness.
I couldn't breathe. There wasn't room to berate myself for my choice. Normal people would be dead several times over in Fion's position. You couldn't outdo a god.
I'll see you again, Ivy, in the flesh this time.
No.
Stay here.
Pain wrenched through my body, tearing through my skin like live currents in my blood. I blacked out for a moment, and when I blinked, steadying myself against the wall, he was gone. "Shit!" I screamed, pounding against the door with both fists. Locked. I took in a shuddering breath, trying to calm my thoughts. He hadn't taken away my weapons. My magic hadn't let him. But the vow kept me standing. Stay here. There was no subverting the words. A loud noise drew me to the window. The door to the balcony didn't open, of course. The crowd below followed his every move. The half-bloods left the castle in a swarm, following their leader. Shit. Those weren't all local half-bloods. What had Vance said? There were thousands across England alone, and doubtless even more worldwide. No wonder I hadn't seen Fion or any of his minions. They'd been working on globe-spanning recruitment tactics the whole time, ferrying souls across death to the Grey Vale, ready to be sacrificed. And now he was about to take them on their final journey. My nails bit into my palms. Magic burst from my skin without me consciously using it, but fizzled out on connection with the wall. Fion, at the front of the group, turned back to give me a knowing look. Then he led his army out of sight. Damn it! Damn the vow, and damn them all! The word stay lodged in my head, and I might as well be screaming into the empty sky. I was stronger than a fairy vow. I'd broken his hold on me when he'd used a tongue-tying spell once already. But he'd gone. He'd taken his army with him. I swore loudly, like someone might hear. Come on, Ivy, think! I was stuck here, but... Wait. My physical body was bound. I didn't have to stay inside it. I fell out of my body so abruptly, I had the weird déjà vu moment of watching myself fall back onto the plush carpet. My ghost floated, weightless. If I could leave my body, I could surely shift into death. And in that case, his vow only bound my body. I can twist the meaning. But confronting him alone, without a body, was a good way to end up worse than dead. I needed more than myself to challenge him. I needed an army. Magic flowed around me. I reached to draw on the pain the half-bloods left behind. It was there, beneath the currents of their excitement at being chosen by Fion. But not enough. But I wasn't the only person who could cross realms. The weird tugging sensation in my blood was back. I rotated on the spot, drawn to the balcony again. This time, I passed right through the glass door. A hellhound paced below, its huge paws padding on the ground. As I stopped, it looked up at me, head tilted, tongue lolling. I held on to the tugging sensation, which came from my magic. A faint blue line connected me with the beast below. 2 more were behind it. There were hundreds of them. Can I call them all? I wasn't the only one who could cross realms. Hellhounds, I whispered. Come to me. I need you. For a full minute, nothing happened. A second minute. A distinct tugging sensation pulled at me, like in the vision when I'd seen through the eyes of the one on the field. But I still jumped out of my skin when a growl sounded in my ear. "Holy shit!" I gasped. The hellhound stepped out of thin air, its huge paws landing on the bed. Then another. "Whoa! You're all waiting for me." Another growl. Yes, I guess. They answered to my magic. Maybe because it had belonged to a Vocus. Maybe because they didn't want to serve Fionn. "You want to fight on my side?" I asked the hellhound. They growled in the affirmative. For a moment, the room went transparent, and I saw into death. Hundreds of hellhounds waited in the smoke. Half the wild hunt. At least it seemed so. Oh my God! You all want to oppose him. I didn't have the faintest clue why, but this was my last shot. They could travel through death. "My body is bound by a vow. Can you take my spirit and bring it with you?" There was the chance I might die horribly. But the hounds didn't belong to any realm, and if my spirit left, my body wasn't going anywhere. "One of you watch my body," I told them. "If anything happens, touch the mark on my shoulder." I tapped it to demonstrate, and a hellhound settled down beside my body. My spirit floated, and I touched down on the first hellhound's back as it shifted into death. Abruptly, my grip on its back turned solid, like being in death gave my ghost new life. "Come on," I told the other hellhounds. "Let's give him hell." Chapter 22. Leading an army of hellhounds through death officially made it to the top of my list of weird experiences. And considering all the time I'd spent around the Faeries, that was saying a freaking lot. Weirder was the way the hellhounds kept shifting between corporeal and non-corporeal, while I remained in spirit form. Once we'd cleared the prison's grounds, they turned to follow a steep path through the forest. "Cross through realms into death," I told them. The vow hadn't hurt me yet, so I must still be within the terms, until he figured out I'd left my body behind. I held on tighter to the hellhound's thick fur as the world distorted into grey smoke. Every few seconds I feared I'd fall, but I forced my breathing to calm. You don't even have lungs, for God's sake. Also, you can spirit travel. You can control this if you stop freaking out. A pack of hellhounds followed me. Enough to bring down Fionn? Probably not. But I've never been one to let odds get in my way. The survival of my realm depended on me. Their path angled upwards to the right. The Grey Vale's trees had disappeared entirely by now, to be replaced by the greyness of death. Whereabouts in the mortal realm we were, though, I had no idea. I just hoped the hounds knew where they were going. But they would. They'd followed Fionn down this path for years, maybe centuries. The host of hellhounds glided along through smoke and eerie silence. Fionn didn't have much of a head start, but there were potentially hundreds of half-bloods standing between me and him, assuming he hadn't already given them the bodies of full-blooded, overpowered she-lords. If that happened, goodbye mortal realm, hello second invasion. No pressure then, Ivy. The air vibrated around me. I gritted my teeth as a chill wind took hold of me, trying to make me lose my balance. Not the vow. Fionn hadn't noticed us following him yet, but it was only a matter of time. We'd moved in a straight line for at least 2 minutes. Must be the ley line. That accounted for the restless stirring sensation in the air. My magic was powerful enough that, for all I knew, everyone in death might be able to sense my presence. I hoped it wouldn't cause any residual after-effects in the mortal realm or death. The path grew more solid, and I caught glimpses of silver-leaved trees on either side. We must be coming to a key point. I'd learned to recognize them now, places where the fog of death was interrupted by flashes of the grey veil. My hellhound steed growled a warning. The wind grew stronger, and a blot appeared on the path ahead. My heart jolted. A wraith. Had Fionn himself stopped to confront me? Even if not, I was less than certain my magic could kill one without my sword. "Don't stop," I told the hellhound. "We're gonna mow them down." Magic hummed to life inside me, and I raised my hands, imagining I held a sword. The magic flowed into shape, forming the outline of Helena, complete with the runes glowing on the hilt. My gaze snagged on the symbols, and a headache nudged me between the eyes. Glyphs. Invocations. Could I read them? The wraith hovered over the path, its smoky form too indistinct to see who it might be. It wasn't even human-shaped, more like a tree spreading its roots across the path. It was too late to stop the hounds. I raised my sword in a clear warning, then shouted, "Get out of the way or I'll mow you down!" Blue light surged from my hands, colliding with the wraith. The root-like appendages moved, jabbing at me, but I deflected them with a transparent sword in my hands. "Tear it down," I told the hellhounds, and leaped to the ground to face my opponent. My next blast of magic struck at the wraith's flailing limbs, but it had planted itself in the middle of the path and looked like it had no intention of moving. The way the root-like threads struck at me was awfully familiar. Oh no. Oh shit, no. Who had helped free Fionn and wanted a new body? As my hand faltered, a face leered at me from the fog, twisted and inhuman, yet chillingly recognizable as the Lady of the Tree. She'd left part of herself behind when she'd died after all. "You!" I deflected another strike from 2 roots, moving easily as a ghost. The hellhounds closed in behind me, leaping around her and snapping at her roots. But they were too solid, and she was little more than a wraith. "Ivy Lane," she crooned. "I asked to be the one to stop you. I knew you'd find a way around the vow, just like when you cheated me." "Please, you lied and murdered people." My ghostly sword's light grew brighter, illuminating her madly glowing ghost eyes. "You'd really give up your shot at a new body for revenge on me?" Magic surged from my palms, slamming into her. I had no doubt that if I'd used this much magic against someone with corporeal form, I'd have knocked their head off. As it was, the roots kept flailing back, but her tree form didn't move. "He walks again," she whispered. "He walks again because of my words. I will gain a body of the highest order." Okay, she's cracked. "Not if I destroy you first." "Here, Ivy Lane, the dead never truly die. They remember. The huntsman will reward me for my loyalty." "You told Calder how to revive him from the dead?" I asked. "And he has you on guard duty, while he and his friends get shiny new bodies all by themselves? That's low." "He will give me my tree back!" she screamed, and I braced myself as a current of icy air slammed into me. Yep, she's definitely lost it. She hadn't exactly been stable when she was alive. Losing her magic the first time around, plus whatever had happened to transplant her from Faerie into the mortal realm, had stripped away whoever she was before. Without the life drinker, she was nothing. A wraith, waiting to expire. Death energy, concentrated in one place. I let her pain feed into my magic, ignoring her high-pitched scream. Energy pulsed from my hands, striking her over and over, and I brought the spirit sword to point at her tree form's heart. The sword passed right through her, but the glyphs grew brighter. Would an invocation work? I'd used one on the dead before. I fell back as the hellhounds converged, my gaze briefly dropping to the sword in my hands. The hilt was transparent, but the image of the glyphs carved into its real-life counterpart flashed before my eyes, including one I'd wanted to try out before. Break. The word exploded from my mouth, leaving a coppery taste, as though I'd bitten my tongue in my real body. I swayed on the spot, but the lady's scream pierced through me, high and never-ending. Her tree-like form broke apart, bright blue light engulfing the path, and hazy smoke was all that remained. Okay, I'm going to use that one on Fionn. Then I saw the bodies on the path. Dozens. All half-bloods. The ones who'd eagerly followed Fionn out of the castle. They hadn't been able to pass through the veil with their physical bodies, so he'd taken care of the problem in his own way. Rage burned inside me. I'd been too late. There was no sign of a struggle. They'd gone willingly. I stumbled over a female body, separate from the others. Roseanne. Damn it! In spite of myself, I knelt down to look at her. Had the Morrigan left her on the path, and joined Fionn to witness the end? Roseanne stared, her breath fogging the air. I moved back, heart thumping. I couldn't touch her to see if she had a heartbeat, but she was alive. I couldn't take her with me, but I'd come back for her, if I could. I ran again, willing my spirit to glide down the path towards its end, hoping I wasn't too late. Come on, I called to the hellhounds. If you see Fionn, kill him. Bonus points for the Morrigan if she's here. I wasn't sure she would be. As a death goddess, she doubtless had her own agenda, but even an uneasy alliance between gods would be enough to destroy our world. I felt the cauldron before I saw it. A sound like the hum of 1,000 voices reverberated through the air, through death. I'm coming after you, Fionn, you bastard. The humming continued. My magic reacted, my teeth rattling in my skull. But the effect of the power spiraling down the spirit line made it impossible to tell where the sound came from. I gritted my teeth and continued until the air turned transparent, and I touched down on grass. My jaw dropped. The cauldron sat in the center of a field, easily the size of a football pitch. There was enough room to accommodate every one of the hundreds of half-bloods lining up to be united with their new bodies. Admittedly, as ghosts, they didn't take up much space, but the hum of hundreds of voices mingled with the noise coming from the vast black cauldron sitting in the center. A familiar blue sheen surrounded it. Fairy blood. The Lady of the Tree had been right all along. Fairy blood did grant immortality. Only from this cauldron. I took in a deep breath. I'd had to leave my sword behind, along with half my magic. But I could still use invocations. Destroy the freaking cauldron, magic. The humming stopped as the cauldron's contents swirled, and a figure appeared in its depths, rising into the air.
Sorry to disappoint you, Ivy. You're too late.
He appeared in a blur of skin, towering over me. Thank God smoke covered most of his formidable form, because he wasn't wearing any clothes. I don't believe it, I said. You pulled a Voldemort on me. He tilted his head on one side. Guess I shouldn't have expected him to get the reference. Put some freaking clothes on. He bared his teeth at me. The cauldron smoke swirled, cloaking him in armor. Oh, hell. Apparently it could create anything, not just life. But there must be a limit.
Like I said, you're too late, he said. I should have guessed you'd defy me, but I'm disappointed in my hellhounds.
They aren't yours, I said. You can't own people. The hellhounds are smarter than you are anyway. I turned to the leading hound. Kill him.
They can't come near the cauldron, he said. It repels them. They are death, and it is life.
Pity. I swung my half-formed sword at him. As usual, my magic evaded him, though anger shot through my veins. Okay, the cauldron it is. I aimed my attack at the ground beneath our feet. He sighed.
I didn't want to have to do this, Ivy.
He waved a hand, and the half-bloods converged on me. They couldn't touch me as a ghost, but blue and green light sprang from their hands, encasing me like a barrier. Damn it! They still had their magic. Blue and green threads combined to push me further away from the cauldron. I gritted my teeth and pushed back, but there were too many of them. An invocation burned my throat. But Theon casually gestured, and my mouth locked shut. I shot him a look of venomous fury. The sound of hoofsteps broke through the rumbling anger of the half-bloods gathered by the cauldron, and a group of knights rode up on their black steeds. Theon's entourage. They were already immortal, of course, so they probably had no need for the cauldron. As one, they drew their weapons. A flash of green light stood out amongst the blue. The life drinker. It could only be wielded by someone with she blood. Apparently, Theon had conceded it over to one of his minions. Probably bound them with a vow to stop them claiming it for themselves. I fought against the spell binding my tongue. Anger rolled through me. Not just from me, but from the others too. My body trembled with it. But at the moment, their fury was directed at me, because they thought I was here to stop them getting their shot at immortality. There was a fair bit of pain mixed in there too. Theon had brutally killed them, leaving their bodies on the path of the veil. And now the cauldron was their one shot at new life. Theon's gaze followed mine, and he laughed.
You're wondering why I handed the life drinker over to another of my she-warriors. The life drinker will serve a purpose in the end, especially for your friends.
That did it. Fury broke through the spell holding my mouth shut, and I spat at his feet. He moved out of range, the tiniest amount of annoyance entering his expression.
Still, you failed to show me respect.
Respect? You hurt my friends and tried to kill me. Not to mention the stunt you pulled in the witch's forest. You didn't care if I got rid of the ring or not. You'd have left my world to fall into the abyss just to screw with me. Besides, I'm still bound by a vow. Unless you'd like to prove your goodwill by freeing me.
I can do better, said Theon. I'm willing to offer you a new body of your own.
No. I'm not taking a bath in anyone's blood, even if I wanted to be one of you, which I don't.
Wouldn't you like a godlike body to match your magic? You humans are too fragile, and you'll die out soon enough.
Not if I have anything to do with it. Immortality doesn't give you the right to force people to obey your every whim.
The she themselves will fall at my feet in the end, said Theon. Just as your old human civilizations did. I lived before your pathetic little island had crawled out of the Dark Ages.
You skipped a few centuries, I told him. We don't care for wannabe overlords rampaging through our realm and destroying everything. We don't need anyone to rule us, especially sadistic immortals. Your ways don't belong in our world.
Would you say the same if you'd remained in the Grey Vale and hadn't adapted to living with mortals again? If your mage hadn't claimed you as his?
This isn't the 19th century, I said. Vance and I are partners, I'm not his property.
You won't be seeing him again, Ivy, he said. Were you wondering if you could use an invocation to cage me again? I wouldn't bother your tiny human mind, Ivy. As the huntsman, I am immune to all commands except my duty, and I've already escaped that.
That's why he can't be affected by invocations, because he was the huntsman. Being in control of transporting the dead was a hell of a responsibility, and if he was immune to commands, invocations were basically orders, in a way, then nobody would be able to force him to switch sides. But they hadn't needed to. He deserted by himself, and all the realms would pay the price for it.
If not for my generosity, Ivy, you'd still be held captive by the vow you made me. I can redo it.
No, I said. Our vow said I owed you a favor. You told me to stay, and I did. My body did, anyway. You can't take that back now. Not my problem if you didn't think of everything first.
Perhaps not, Ivy. But when you're reborn into a new body, I can put you under all the vows I like.
I hissed out a breath, willing my magic to break through the shield holding me. I won't join your game. I'll die first. Theon turned to his half-blood army.
I think I'd better prove my goodwill first. You.
He pointed to a pale, teenage half-blood ghost.
Go to the cauldron.
The spirit obeyed, leaving the others as they looked on enviously. The shield holding me back slipped a little. Blue light spread up my arms. Theon had turned his head slightly to watch the cauldron. Now was my chance. As the cauldron stirred, the air whispered a warning, and a flock of crows passed overhead in a black flood, like ink spilling across the sky. The Morrigan was here. Chapter 23. The huge bird burst out of the cloud of crows, landing in front of Theon with an earth-shaking crash. I was too stunned to unleash my attack, as her fear effect caught me full in the face. Even as a spirit, raw terror lanced through me, stopping my breath.
We had a deal, she told Theon. Half the souls. I want them now.
Theon's mouth twisted in annoyance.
You'll get your wish.
What? One of the half-bloods asked, only to be silenced when confronted by the Morrigan's death stare. Her claw extended, hooking through the ghost like a fishing hook and reeling him over to her. Then she hooked another, and another. Terror, pain, lapping against me like the waves of a vast ocean. Half the souls. I stared at both of them. You're handing them over to her. So he did plan to betray them after all. The collective shock and disbelief of the half-bloods added to the pain and rage fueling my magic, but I remained locked in place. The Morrigan, she devoured souls, and it looked like Theon had delivered the half-bloods to her as payment for her help. Eat his soul, I called to her. He's a lying bastard. The Morrigan didn't look at me. She was too busy herding the struggling ghosts over to her. Theon's horsemen had moved to surround the clearing and bar the way to the cauldron, leaving no way out. God damn it, Theon! An anguished scream came from amongst the dead the Morrigan had claimed. Roseanne. She was here, her spirit ghostly and terrified-looking. I'm your daughter, she sobbed, but the claw pierced her through the chest, merciless.
Your soul is mine to claim.
The Morrigan spoke coldly, her gaze slipping to her daughter. The fear spell let go of me, and I quickly looked away, drawing up all the magic I could. Their agony manifested in the form of a glowing blue sword in my hand, and I pointed it at her throat.
"Stop," said Fionn. "I wouldn't do that, Ivy. She's immortal, like me."
"The hell you are!" Fury rolled through me. "I'm not letting her take Roseanne."
"What's your attachment to her? She killed her own father, and would have killed your mage friend too."
Fionn made no move to confront me, content to let the Morrigan continue to claim the spirits he'd lied to. I kept my eyes on the blade, away from her eyes. "Let her go," I snarled through my teeth. "You've got your souls. You won't take any more."
"I've had enough of your insubordination, Ivy. Throw her into the cauldron."
The Morrigan's claw hooked through my chest, yanking me into the air. I screamed, losing all sense of dignity. As a ghost, I couldn't fight against her, even with magic roiling through my body. The Morrigan let go, and I fell towards the churning abyss of blue-tinged blood. Panic erupted. I caught glimpses of hellhounds tearing at Fionn's army, of his horsemen forced to break away to fight against them. Spirits, desperately heading for the cauldron before the Morrigan hooked them too. I seemed to take an age to fall. Then the blue light underneath me became visible. My magic had formed a shield. But could even that stop the cauldron swallowing me up? I didn't want a new body. I especially didn't want to be enslaved to Fionn. The sharp tang of magic seared my throat. The mock sword I'd used had disappeared, becoming blue energy once again. But I didn't need a sword. Just my magic, in raw form, fueled by the rage and pain of 100 spirits. More! How many spirits had passed through here, carrying their suffering, only to be reborn into a new body? Thousands, millions maybe. He'd done the job for countless years. Each half-fairy had their own story, their own suffering. But I wouldn't let them be reborn under his control. I'm sorry. The cauldron shimmered and tilted as the ground buckled, cracks spreading through the grass to expose the earth beneath. As Fionn turned to me, shock etched on his face, I spoke the word. Break. The words wrenched loose from me, shaking the world. Fionn screamed in rage, and whatever he'd shouted was lost as the cauldron spilled over. Thick blood drenched the ground, flowing towards the cliff's edge, but it was already dissolving, its potency drained away. A crack spread down its center, then another, breaking through its solid surface. More blue-tinged blood drenched the exposed earth, spilling into its roots. Fionn screamed again. So did I, when my magical shield dropped and I fell. "You're a ghost, Ivy!" Gasping, I managed to stop myself falling just in time. Chaos reigned. The hellhounds had scattered, and so had the ghosts, but the Morrigans seemed to have disappeared in the wake of Fionn's abounding anger. He shot magic from his palms at one of his henchmen, who fell from his horse with his blood spilling, mingling with the flood from the cauldron. He's killing his own army now. I needed to get away, but I'd barely moved an inch when he whirled on me, pure anger in his eyes. His body warped and twisted, growing larger by the second. Talons took the place of hands. Wings burst from his shoulder blades, and his armor melded with his skin, like scales. Malevolent black eyes burned into mine. His true form. The gods were shapeshifters. He'd been one of them the whole time. Fionn flew at me. I raised my hands in defense, but magic didn't answer my call. Shock rang through me. I couldn't sense my magic at all. Oh God, did I disconnect from my body? Am I too late? Pain wrenched through my shoulder, burning through my skin. The mage mark. And then I was back in my body, gasping for breath, pain burning through me. Fire. Fire imps. I lay where I'd fallen in the palace, on my side against the soft carpet, a carpet which was suddenly on fire. The hellhound who touched the mark growled and padded to the window. The imps scattered, screeching, as I lurched to my feet. My sword, the real one, my talisman, remained in my hands. I gripped it hard to stop my spirit from breaking free from my body again. I'd forgotten how to move, used to the weightlessness of being a ghost. But if I left, my body would burn. I'd die. Flames blocked the door. The fire imps ran around screeching while I stumbled forward one step at a time. The whole building shook, but didn't collapse. Glass littered the carpet where the windows had shattered. It took 3 attempts to cross the veil without leaving my body behind. The last I saw of Faerie was a surge of flame, and then clean air filled my lungs. I'd returned to the mortal world, but my magic had gone. Chapter 24. I rolled onto my back. I'd landed in the manor's front garden, the same place I'd left. My body was working. My spirit was back in the right place. My magic, though. Theon wasn't dead. He'd taken on his real form, and I doubted the hellhounds would hold him back for long. The cauldron had shattered. His ghosts would fade, and he'd get no army. But that didn't mean he wouldn't find another one. He had his horseman, the life-drinker, and possibly the Morrigan as well. And I'd left Roseanne behind, too. I struggled to my feet, wishing I'd got a new body after all. This one hurt. Everywhere. I stumbled between the hedges, and stopped short when I reached the main path. No wards covered the manor's walls. They'd been torn down, wiped away. The door hung open, revealing the hallway. Bloodstains ran up the entryway, stark against the wallpaper. The sight punched me in the chest, disconnected my thoughts. They came here. They killed everyone. Not Vance. Please, not him. The words rang in my head like a mantra as I pounded down the hallway to the place where the meeting room door lay in splintered pieces. No! The hoarse cry tore from my chest as I turned over the first body. Lady Penrose. One look at her injuries and all hopes that anyone had survived melted away. Someone had shot magic at her so hard it had burned a hole right through her body. Green fairy magic. Summer she. Vance! I screamed, my voice cracking. 3 mages lay dead in the council room. Others in the living room. Not Vance, nor Wanda or Drake. But Vance would never have left his mages to die. Unconscious, he couldn't teleport anyway. Which left only one outcome. A beeping sounded from the table. Vance's phone. With shaking hands, I picked it up. On the screen, my messages were open, and the following words had been typed into a blank message. Oh, Ivy, you never should have left me. If you want to see your mage again, come to me. Theon, I hissed between my teeth. But Theon had been with me the whole time. Either some major time slippage had occurred, or he'd sent someone else to take care of the mages. Summer magic had killed them, not winter. I pressed the heels of my palms to my eyes, fighting tears. In the state he was in, Vance was entirely vulnerable to Theon's whims. God only knew what he'd do to him to ensure obedience from me. I clenched my teeth together and shut the thoughts off. Dwelling on that wouldn't help me rescue him. Giving up was beyond question. I'd walked into death to find him before. This was no different. I wouldn't let it be. but I had no magic. As for defeating Theon himself, I needed to hear what had happened 21 years ago straight from the Sidhe themselves, whatever it cost me to find out the truth. Green light exploded behind me. I whirled around, my sword in hand, and ran out of the manor to meet whatever Faerie had decided to throw at me next. Dazzling green light flared around the lawn, and every plant seemed to bloom brighter under the impossible glow of summer fairy magic. This time, 2 fairy knights approached me. If they fought me, I'd lose. I had my talisman, but no magic lit up the blade at their appearance. I stood my ground. I still had at least 1 iron dagger in my pocket. I wouldn't die. Not before I found Vance. Unless they'd been the ones to kill the mages. I raised the dagger, ready to aim, but stopped as I recognized the figures riding towards me. "You again," I said. "Lord Riven, was it? We are here to speak to the Mage Lord." "Then you'll speak to me too." "You don't belong to our court," he said coldly. "And you still haven't told us what happened to the ring." "It's gone," I said. "Thanks to Theon, the huntsman, whatever the hell he used to call himself. And by the way, I killed him, but he's come back as a shape-shifting god and wants to destroy all the realms." "I don't believe you," said Lord Riven. "Hand over the ring, Ivy Lane." It took every ounce of control I possessed not to punch him in the nose. "I don't have the damn thing. Can't you sense it? It blocks magic, even yours." His eyes narrowed, but he must know I was right. "What I do have, however, is a bone to pick with your people." I stepped to the side to reveal the blood in the hallway. "Your people did that. They took my partner and slaughtered the Mage Council. There's nothing I won't do to get them back." "My people were not responsible," said Lord Riven. "How dare you?" "You're exiles," I said. "There are bodies in there with Summer's magic still fresh on them. Even if your court isn't directly responsible, someone has to pay for this." As Lord Riven opened his mouth to protest, I said, "I wish to speak to a higher member of the fairy courts. I'm willing to negotiate, but believe me when I say the Grey Veil is a threat to every fairy in every realm. If you let us die, you'll be next." "She is right," said a gravelly voice. A small figure stepped out of the shadows. "Quentin." "My bond to the Colton family has lifted now the manor is undefended," he told me. "Then go." My voice cracked. "Go away and let us die in peace. That's all you people want from us mortals, don't you?" "This was never my intention." His gaze flickered to the blood-stained corridor, and his mouth tightened. "Did you hide while they took Vance?" "I did not. I was with my kin. Summer has agreed to speak to you on their own territory." He turned to the warriors, who watched him with blank expressions. "Ivy Lane has been granted an invitation to the Summer Court." "What?" Lord Riven looked outraged. The brownie bowed his head to me. "For my master. I will take you to my realm. You'll have to be prepared for anything, however. It is not designed with mortals in mind." I gave a wild laugh. It'd be a holiday compared to Theon's death dimension. "But I'll only go if they can help me find Vance." "They will. They know your magic, Ivy. They can help you find the truth about where it came from, and how to find the missing mage lords." My magic. The power of a god, for all the use it was now. But I did have my talisman, and a mission to rescue Vance, come hell or fairy apocalypse. "All right then," I said to Quentin. "Take me to the Seelie Court." This has been an Audible Studios production of Faerie Hunt, The Changeling Chronicles, Book 6. Written by Emma L. Adams. Performed by Lucy Christian. Executive Producer, Mike Charzek. Copyright 2017 by Emma L. Adams. Production copyright 2017 by Audible Inc. Audible Studios is a division of Audible Inc. If you enjoyed this audiobook, be sure to get more books in the Changeling Chronicles series today.